On record.
Call to order the City of Lincoln City City Council meeting, February 27th, 2012. Roll call, please.
Mayor Anderson.
Here.
Gordon Eggleton.
Excused.
Gary Ellingson.
Here.
Chester Norikis.
Here.
Roger Sprague.
Excused.
Henry Quant.
Here.
And Alex Ward.
Here. Stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance of the United States of America. God, indivisible, with liberty. Thank you all for coming this evening. It's always nice to have a live audience, though we've grown to appreciate all those viewing on cable. Thank you, sir. Our next order of business is comments from citizens present on agenda, non-agenda items. The purpose of comments from citizens is to allow citizens to present information or raise an issue regarding items not on the agenda or regarding agenda items that do not have a public hearing. A time limit of 5 minutes per citizen shall apply. I've asked the city recorder to utilize the light system so that the speaker will be informed as to their remaining time and so that we have consistency. As a general rule, this is not a time for exchange of questions. However, at the conclusion of this agenda item, a councilor can discuss or raise questions regarding something presented by citizens. Before we get directly into citizens, we do have a special presentation by Ryan Green. And Mr. Green, you're more than welcome to come forward.
Let me just have a couple words to maybe introduce this real quickly. In our first recent real hard look-see about ADA issues had to do with some complaints that we received, and those were by and large valid complaints, and we were taking them seriously, have fixed many issues. But as we came up to speed on what our more comprehensive requirements were under the American Disabilities Act, we realized that we needed some help. And the issues are a lot broader than some of our recent projects. So that's an introduction to what you're about to hear tonight. Is that
perfect? Well, Mr. Mayor and council members, again, as stated, my name is Ryan Green. I am representing the Oregon Paralyzed Veterans of America, but just so that I don't misrepresent myself, I like to always be up front that I myself am not a veteran. I was hired to do a lot of the government relations, the legislative program for the office. The Oregon PVA has over 400 members here in Oregon. A lot of them have some type of disability, either from spinal cord injury or disease, such as MS. A lot of my job is to advocate, provide technical assistance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. I've got a PowerPoint presentation that I put together. Again, I offer technical assistance based on my interpretation of and some certifications I've got through years of training with the Department of Justice and the Access Board. You're going to hear a little bit about, you've heard a lot about 2010 ADA standards. I won't go into a lot of specifics. I know you've got a full agenda. I'll try to get through this presentation as fast as I can, and we'll save questions for the end. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you.
Again, my contact information, I have some cards that I'll leave here as well. We're based out of Salem. But you've heard David touched on the need. Just to hammer some numbers home, 54 million Americans have some, over the age of 15, have some form of disability. That's according to the 2000 census. 70% of us will eventually have a temporary or permanent disability that makes climbing stairs impossible. This overall translates into approximately 1 in 5 Oregonians have some form of disability. So let's go through the history quick. As you all are aware, back in 1990, the ADA was signed and it included 5 titles: employment, public entities. Title II is what we're going to talk about briefly tonight. Title III covered public accommodations, which are your private businesses, movie theaters, gas stations. Telecommunications is Title IV, and miscellaneous is Title V. A lot of this is transportation and effective communication. And then we touch on the 2010 standards. I'll get into more specifics there, but those were signed by Attorney General Eric Holder. Title II entities take effect. The effective date for compliance is March 15th, 2011. So you can see we're already getting past some of these dates, given until March 15th of 2012 to comply. This is specifically for Title II entities. Back when the ADA was first passed in 1990, again, public entities such as Lincoln City were required to review all their programs and all their services, all their facilities, their curb ramp. They were implemented a curb ramp plan with a time frame on when to install or repair curb ramps. We'll touch on that here a little bit more. And the ultimate responsibility for enforcement is the U.S. Department of Justice. Again, any state or local government is under Title II public entities, including Amtrak and any commuter authority. Further obligations basically is to maintain accessible features. So these are features to public areas that have been brought into compliance. They also need to be maintained. Provide equal access to programs and services. An example for that, you've got a very accessible room here, but in some of our older communities that haven't taken that step forward to make city halls more accessible, it would be moving a council meeting to a floor that was accessible if there were stairs that existed. Shall not also discriminate in employment that's offered by the public entity, and that falls into Title I. Additional obligations. Now this is going to be talking specifically more here about Lincoln City here. Develop and implement a self-evaluation. We touched on that. That's your programs and services that are offered by Lincoln City, such as anything at the community center, swimming classes, things of that nature. Develop and implement a transition plan. This is where we go more into looking at facilities and structures. Public notifications are required to be posted throughout the city facilities of what your Title II obligation, what you're obligated to under Title II of the ADA. You have this, designate an ADA coordinator, develop a complaint and grievance procedure. Sounds like you all are covered there. You have an intake process and an individual who receives the complaints and then hopes to hear the individuals who have the grievances and then move forward into finding some type of agreement. Getting into self-evaluations a little bit more, identify all services. A lot of this has to do with effective communication, auxiliary aids and services, such as devices or interpreters for public meetings. You have obligations where if an individual would happen to need an interpreter, you are at the liberty to set some guidelines as to, you know, how long you have to be notified. Here we're going to talk a little bit further about the structural barriers and program accessibility. This is more of my comfort zone here. State and local government agencies that have a responsibility for roads and highways. This is again your public right-of-ways, your curb ramps, your sidewalks. These are all integral parts of having an accessible community. The facilities we're talking about here in transition plans, these are just examples: museums, libraries, picnic areas, parks, historical sites, scenic overlooks, public transit, again, beach access areas. A lot of these areas were included into the 2010 standards, were seaports, pedestrian right-of-way, again, we've touched on, fishing piers, fishing points, curb ramp. Again, this is in the code, to put together a detailed inventory of specifically every curb ramp that's in the city, and everywhere that there, currently is no access. We understand how there's certain neighborhoods where no sidewalk exists. Prioritizing locations to be modified. Typically, when I, with my office, do these evaluations, we look at the highly traveled areas, basically up and down Highway 101 here, for example, where all the shops and the businesses are and the bus stops and things like that. We want to make sure that those are a priority. Those are the areas that are accessible, and you can see by driving up and down 101 that there has been areas that have been brought into compliance, and there's still some areas that are lacking as well. Identify what type of modification. Again, another example would be curb ramps. Specify public involvement. This is probably the most important part of any type of transition plan that you all do. I've been speaking so heavily here on sidewalks and curb ramps because we in my office, the Oregon PVA, believe that's the first place to start. For a lot of folks like myself who use wheelchairs that are unable to drive, those are kind of our highways. But seeking public input is a big part of it as well. Once we develop a transition plan, we put it out to the public and see what we're missing. I, Ryan Green, I'm going to miss some stuff. I've been doing this for 15 years. There's things that people who live in your community know way better than I, and they're going to be able to hold me accountable if I were to provide this assistance. And then we work together and figure out a way how to best implement everything we know. Getting started. Appoint someone to coordinate a plan, typically your ADA coordinator. This kind of ends up being the facilitator here. Determine if a self-evaluation and transition plan has already been done. It's my understanding that back in the early 90s, Lincoln City did do some sort of self-evaluation. I haven't seen it, but it's something that we definitely want to update. Form a committee, again, representing all applicable sectors of the organization to assist in the effort. We'll get building code division, engineering, human resources, everybody kind of at the table, including the council, to oversee, what we want to do here. Accessibility of existing facilities. This is one that we often forget. Public entities are not necessarily required to renovate each and every facility. There's a lot of historical aspects that we need to consider. Mainly, if we can make a program accessible, we don't typically always have to renovate a building. We all know the dollars and cents here. There's buildings that have been built in the 20s, 30s, 40s that we try to make accessible to the maximum extent feasible without causing a ton of hardship on the entity. The example I used earlier is such as moving a council meeting, or if certain parts of the library weren't accessible. If someone can, like for me, a good example would be reaching the top shelf of books. I just can't do it. So having staff available to make the program fully accessible to me. Alterations to existing facilities continued. When an existing facility or part of an existing facility is altered, it must be made readily accessible. I mentioned to the maximum extent feasible. This again applies to the facilities altered after January 26, 1992. That date, we say the ADA was passed in 1990. The actual technical requirements, known as the Americans with Disabilities Act Accessibility Guidelines, those became effective January 26, 92. Those guidelines give you the direction on clearances and whatnot. Now, 2010, the Americans with Disabilities Act Accessibility Guidelines, ADAG we call them, those standards have been updated. Those include a lot updates to parking, communication, assembly areas, homeless shelters were included. I mentioned fishing piers. Public entities do not need to take actions that would result in fundamental alteration of programs or undue financial administrative burdens. Touched on that. Accessibility, let's see, destroy the historical significance. Again, we want, there's certain aesthetic looks that you want to stick with in a historic building that's on the National Registry. That doesn't necessarily exempt the building from being accessible. Again, we want to bring it up to date to the maximum extent feasible. Any determinations where the entity would feel that, hey, we don't feel we can meet this obligation because of the financial hardship, you want to make sure you keep those on file. So what you have here in Lincoln City, as far as my involvement, and David touched on that, really it was just kind of a hit and miss thing why I'm even here today. There was some emails going out from the Visitors and Convention Bureau here up on 4th floor, and they were seeking input from individuals that played sports, and somehow the email got through my inbox, and I said, hey, maybe I noticed Lincoln City was reaching out for some technical assistance, and thought, why don't I respond? And just kind of talked to Sandy Pfaff, who I believe is in the room, and the executive director, and we built a relationship. So I found out, hey, we've got an ADA coordinator here. There's a grievance procedure. There's a fairly extensive bike and pedestrian plan proposal that I've looked at, and it looks fantastic. I've really met a lot of the staff. Also mentioned I was here, Mr. Mayor, you sat through my somewhat boring disability etiquette training, but I managed to get a few laughs out of people. But that's just, I met a lot of the city staff, and I was real impressed with how understanding and caring the folks were, and I appreciated that. And you've acknowledged that there are issues. We've got some things going on here, and it's not just Lincoln City. It's all over the country. It's everywhere in the country. A few years ago, the city of Bend had the Department of Justice come in and review everything. You don't want that to happen. If it does, you can say, I was here, and we're doing something. Now leave us alone. We wish it was that easy. But and you reached out for help, which is another reason I'm here. What you have done, consulted with the Oregon PVA and other folks. It's not just me, it's members of the community. Your staff is educating themselves. Again, we provided the trainings. That was more disability, how to interact with folks who you may not normally interact with. I've started building a relationship with urban renewal here. I've looked at some projects, and I think there's good intent there. Yeah, there's some missteps, but I think we can work around those. Again, I mentioned the VCB on 4th floor. We've looked at a lot of the beach access areas. They've got a lot of information included on the website. We were at the Cultural Center 2 weeks ago. I'm currently writing a report on my findings there, but I have not a lot of major issues. Purchasing equipment. The Visitors and Convention Bureau has purchased a beach wheelchair. I mean, how cool is that? These things aren't cheap. Aids for lodging, such as toiletry items, benches, transfer benches for bathing. Moving forward and wrapping up my presentation here, consider us as a technical advisor, as a partner with the city. That's something that we're talking with David and Human Resources about, is how my office can have a partnership with the city of Lincoln City, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a long-term thing. But if we can show we've got an aggressive timeline, such as taking projects in phases, as long as we show we're moving forward, we're taking input from the community, I think within 10 years from today, we can be a leader in the state, if not the Northwest. Resources, ada.gov. If you want to check my accuracy with anything I've stated, go to ada.gov. I'm on there 4 or 5 times a day. They've got all the materials you need. Access Board, they're the individuals who draft the guidelines, the technical requirements, and then on the employment aspects, EEOC. So I've went through a lot of information here. I apologize, but you can go ahead, and I know your agenda's full, so I wanted to try to be as quick as possible. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Green. It was very helpful, and to have more than just speak, to have the PowerPoint helps emphasize the broad, encompassing aspects of the ADA Act. Does council have any questions of Mr. Green? No? Gosh.
It's too easy. Okay.
Yeah, well, no. We know it's not going to be easy. But thank you for being on our team and assisting us in this endeavor.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Let's see, you had a couple of people sign up to make comments. Mike Sahlstrom? Okay. This would be the only time you'd have to speak. There's no public hearing on VRD time, so we'll invite you. Or at the end.
We're having an appeal.
Oh, is this the appeal? Oh, I'm sorry. Gotcha. Thank you.
Sorry, we did have 2 different VRD issues.
And you were so good to put appeal here. I just didn't catch it. My mistake. Mr. Warner.
At 1233 Lakewood. I'll make my comments very brief here tonight. I gave each one of you councilmen a handout, and I hope by now, with new councilmen, and I see some of them are missing tonight, but I hope that all of you have read the 33-page document on urban renewal, which covers the statute, which I think is extremely important for you councilmen to get yourselves more involved in what happens in urban renewal. And you've heard me many, many times that my concerns about how the money's been spent. However, all the points that I'm raising here tonight are actually found in the Lincoln City mission statement. And there's 4 questions each urban renewal project needs to answer. Is the area blighted? And is there building or buildings that need to be removed? Does the area in the project have the potential vacant property for new construction to increase property values? Will the project create jobs on the long-term basis? Is there an economic development plan for this urban renewal project? If the answer is no on any of those questions, I think you people need to really take a good hard look at it, because those are the important parts. And this just didn't come from me. I've talked to a number of cities and asked information from them, and they all pretty much agree that this is the criteria that you need for an urban renewal project. That hasn't been followed here in Lincoln City. And And approximately 75% of all the urban renewal money has gone into city facilities, improvements for Lincoln City, which means that actually those $28 million, there will be no tax value to repay urban renewal. In other words, the county does not tax city properties, and that's a huge concern. The other statement is the fact, and I have talked to 6 different cities about this, approximately 15% of urban renewal money has been spent on operation of the urban renewal office. That means for personnel and contracts. Now, I'm not taking any slams at the employees in the urban renewal office, because I think that Allison Robinson is an excellent employee and has worked with me many times on providing information that I've been seeking. That isn't the point of the whole thing. Most cities, it runs 3 to 5%. So what I'm saying is over $5 million of urban renewal money has been spent on that office, that there will be no return in tax base to the people of Lincoln City. And that is a real big concern. Throw out a few other figures to you. Urban renewal occupies 15.2% of the land value in Lincoln City, and only 8.8% of new construction has occurred in the urban renewal district. This isn't my numbers, that's Mr. Hawker's numbers. Over $3 million of commercial construction has occurred in the urban renewal district, according to City Manager Hawker's report. Unfortunately, there's been over $3 million taken off the tax rolls by property that the city has purchased. So it's a wash. The point is that you're supposed to be building tax base, and up to this point, the last 10 years has not proven to be that valuable. So all I want to say, the fact that the City Council, I hope, will take a bigger role in making decisions on how this money is spent in the future. We've still got a couple years to go on the urban renewal project, and I like to see that money spent in a better manner than it has been in the past. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. No one else signed up, but you're more than welcome to come up if you'd like to make a comment at this time. Now would be the appropriate time. Hearing none, then we'll move on to agenda item, consent agenda. And the consent agenda, these items are considered routine and may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Any counselor may request that an item be removed for separate discussion and action. The consent agenda consists of requests to read ordinances first by title only. Number 3 is minutes of the meeting January 9th, 2012. That's reapproval. Number 4 is minutes of meeting January 23rd, 2012. And number 5, minutes of meeting February 13th, 2012.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
I just want to clarify that the minutes of meeting, if you approve them tonight, they will replace the minutes you approved earlier. This is just to make some corrections. There were some missing spots in those minutes.
Great. Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agendas 2, 3, 4, and 5. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. We then have next special order of business is appointment to the Parks Board. We had 2 vacancies, and looks like we're making recommendations for those both to be filled. Councilor Ward, I think you were point on this endeavor.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is kind of the end of the last batch, which was considerable, of Parks Board applicants, and 2 very worthy applicants came up, and bring them up here. Gary and I pleasure of interviewing them.
Yeah, all the people we talked to actually were qualified. We were really fortunate, so it's hard to narrow things down.
Okay.
We got Nick Santos.
Yeah, it was Ray Santos,
Ray Santos.
and Shane Jordan. And Ray Santos is been on the Parks Board in the past, and he's also was the soccer coach for the high school. Real interesting gentleman, and really came forward when he saw a need for applicants, and we're happy to have him back. So we'd like to recommend both these gentlemen, but I think we have to start just with one.
at a time.
So
Yep.
why don't we start with Ray Santos?
And you're recommending Ray Santos and Councilman?
Absolutely.
That's his motion, and I'd like to second that.
Okay. We have a motion with a second to appoint Ray Santos to the Parks Committee. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. And your other recommendation?
Other recommendation, I'd like to move that we appoint applicant Shane Jordan to the Parks Board.
Great.
I would like to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Great. We have a motion to appoint Shane Jordan to the Parks Committee. With a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Hearing none. Thank you, gentlemen. And I know there were quite a few applicants there, so you had a lot of interviews, and we're able to, and again, we appreciate all those citizens who sign up for committee action, and hope that we can find a spot for them, if not this committee, another. So
Yeah, there were a lot of applicants. We like to see a lot of applicants, though, and we were able to recommend that they people that were kind of overflow. Maybe look at some other committees.
that's great. Good. All right. Moving then to next item, we have water. This is the Oregon Water Enhancement Board Grant and Watershed. We had a work session regarding this topic last week? Was it last week?
I think so. And we're running together at this point. Well, we had over a 2-hour workshop on a particular grant application that we have pending before the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, and also a general discussion and general outline of an initiative to take a pretty hard look at protecting further protections for our watershed. And I don't want to get into that detail now because we did televise it. We have we are playing that again, and people can call and get the times, or we can even give somebody a DVD of the presentation. Again, we went into a lot of detail, and I think it would be folly of me to try to give a synopsis in a even 5 or 10 minutes. It wouldn't do it justice. So basically we're asking council to do two things. One is to endorse the grant application that we have pending for $450,000, and second of all, to give us a nod to proceed and proceed on a general watershed initiative through the planning process. Again, not an authorization of an expenditure of funds, just simply that you would like us to pursue that initiative, at least at this time.
Okay. Do any of the councilors have questions that were not answered at the watershed work session or this evening for clarification?
Mr. Hucker, in your memo under major industrial parcels, you talk about limiting damage that clear cutting would involve, and maybe I missed this at the workshop, but are there any current methods that are used generally to prevent damage?
Well, a clear cut on the parcel that we're talking about would be damaging because of its slope, and we have a slope map in the packet here in this meeting packet. It shows really severe slopes and the soil types. A clear cut would, by its nature, there probably wouldn't be much road building. It's too steep, so it would be a high line essentially operation, But the clear cut in itself, once the roots give way, we would have we believe, some significant problems from it. So to answer your question, I don't know any way other than not to do a clear cut on that parcel.
And on the Schooner Creek water source property ownership map, we've got a black square for Lincoln City, and I don't see Lincoln City owning any of that property.
1 acre.
Is that true?
No, we own 1 acre. It's the water treatment plant.
Okay.
I didn't list that. I thought it was so small to just kind of ignore it. I should have listed it. It is 1 acre, about 1 acre.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And Mr. Hucker, the type of endorsement would be a motion?
Yeah, we'd need
a motion to...
Right.
So I would entertain, if there's no other questions or any discussion around council, I'd entertain a motion to direct the city manager to, I guess it would be our endorsement of an application for a grant to the Oregon Water Enhancement Board to proceed.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for endorsing our actions of a grant application to the Oregon Water Enhancement Board. All those, does that need a roll call vote?
No,
okay.
just a voice vote.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Under the opposed? Under the opposed? Okay, so it would be 4 and 1.
I should have more clearly vocalized my aye in favor of the motion. I didn't get it out there. So
It was taken that way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the motion carries 4-1.
Right. We have a 4-1 vote. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Even though we've had a vote, would it be appropriate for discussion, continued discussion?
Certainly.
Mr. Quant, you had a question at the workshop that I don't think was answered. Did you get an answer to that?
Yes, I did.
After the workshop?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Could you restate that question and the answer that you got?
It was about the timber value and things like this, and I can't answer confidential.
All right.
A tentative evaluation of the parcel land value versus timber value, I think we need to keep confidential. I did email that to all the council, so it should be in your box, in your email box, but I can furnish it again, or anybody wants to after the meeting. But because we are most likely, or could very easily be in a competitive situation to purchase a parcel, I don't think it's appropriate for us to announce those values.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving then to the next item under special order of business is vacation rental dwelling consensus builder selection. And this is Councilor Sprague and Councilor Ward and myself served independently along with some of the staff members to review project proposals from different consensus builder experts to assist us in the issue of looking at the VRD vacation rental dwelling issues as a public policy statement. And we interviewed the top 3 candidates, all 3 roughly an hour in duration, independently, each for 2 hours. And then the 3 of us took independent poll, of which was distributed in your packets. And the recommendation from that was actually to go with Richard Burke. Richard Burke is from Willamette University, and again, you've seen his packet and proposals, and certainly the public is welcome to review those, and they've been online. But I'd feel, Councilor Ward, any additional comments or thoughts?
Well, I think the rating speaks for itself. Richard Burke was independently everyone's, or the three of ours, first choice. I thought that the other two applicants or proposals were good, and I'll say I went into Mr. Burke's thinking that I had my mind made up on another one, and was very impressed with his presentation, as apparently was the other two.
Well, I think, again, it shows the value of the actual interview process from just the paper proposals, to the interview, because I would say all these top three, moved around as far as their rating after the interview process. Any questions of council? Because what we'd be doing independently is making a recommendation to you that we would proceed and direct city manager to engage in a contract to pursue this endeavor. But wide open to questions. Councilor?
I have trouble endorsing a proposal, spending this kind of money on a consultant, but I feel that we need to do it. But regarding Mr. Burke's proposal on costs and budget estimates, I'm hoping that the fees for rental of halls, catering, duplication of materials, internet service can be handled by us, eliminating $10,000 of his bill. And I'm also hoping that room rental can somehow be covered by Lincoln City as a whole. That's another $1,500 he's put into his budget. So I'm hoping we can save $11,500.
Yes, we caught that early, and I would hope that would be part of the discussion in the final. But yeah, good catch. Other observations or concerns?
I appreciate the work the council members did going over these proposals and doing the interviews and coming up with the proposal. Thank you.
Staff was very helpful in arranging this and sitting in with us and fielding questions as well. So it was a good process. At this point, then, I would entertain a motion for council to direct city manager to proceed with a contract with Richard Burke.
So moved.
We have a motion to approved with a second for city council to direct city manager to pursue a contract for the consensus building selection on the VRD issue. And this needs a roll call vote.
Hunt?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Ward? Ellingson?
Yes.
And Norikis?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And we'd have a wastewater treatment plant progress update.
PowerPoint.
All right.
All right, good evening. Tonight we're going to give you an update on the construction of Phase 1B, the wastewater treatment plant. Just going back to a little bit of history, this project first began in '04, and since then we have constructed the first phase, completed that in '09. The first phase construction was approximately $12.5 million. And now we are in the second phase, Phase 1B. And last year, in 10, we awarded the consulting engineering services, which included design and construction management, to ACE Consultants. And also the contract was awarded for this second phase of construction in May of, 2011, so just last year. for $6.7 million. Now, where excuse me, where we are today is we're about 60% complete. The original contract amount, again, was $6,729,200, and to date, we have change orders totaling $42,950. So we have added that to the original contract amount for a current contract amount of $6,772,150. I wanted to explain a little bit about these contract changes that we've had. In perspective, it's typical and within what we budgeted for or anticipated in terms of a percent of the overall contract. Certainly less than 1%. Council gave us a contingency of $100,000. Again, we're well under that. But I did want to point out that the nature of these contract changes were pretty straightforward, things that weren't clear on the plans or that were discovered during construction. One was a credit to the city. The rest were, again, a total of $42,950. We're hopeful that that's the total amount of change orders we're going to see. We hope it is. And one of the things that we do to ensure the quality and during the construction is we contracted with ACE to perform the construction management activities. And those include ACE providing a resident project representative. He's shown here. His name's Carol Sigmund. He's on site the whole time that the contractors are on site. So he monitors the progress and he documents daily what activities occurred. He also coordinates with the city and with the designers. ACE also conducts regularly. We have monthly progress meetings that includes the contractor, the city, any of the contractor's subs that have a key role in that phase of the work, and of course ACE engineers. We also have weekly on-site coordination meetings. Those are look-aheads. The contractor's very organized and very coordinated with his subs, and so those weekly meetings are important as well. When we have had a big effort such as the concrete pour, we have special meetings to lay out all the players and what's going to happen and make sure everyone's ready to go before we start doing any work. There's several requests for information or clarifications, and the consultant so far has reviewed about 36 to date. Each product that goes into the plant that is used in the construction first has to be reviewed to make sure it's compliant with the plans and specs, and so those have been being diligently reviewed, again, by our construction management team. ACE also looks at change orders, evaluates the change orders, and evaluates the progress payments, and then makes recommendations to the city on what to accept and what to pay. So with that, Joe Primo is our assistant engineer. He's been very involved in this project, and he's going to talk about the construction, actually on-the-ground construction, show us some photos, and we're really picking up from where we left off the last update, which was in October. So, Joe?
Thanks, Stephanie. I'd like to start here with, there's a site plan showing on the screen here. I'd like to go over the main construction. I'd like to point out everything surrounded in red is being removed from the site. We have an existing screw pump building and chlorine contact facility at the bottom of the site that's going to be removed. We also have two existing clarifiers that were used ever since Phase 1A. Those will be demolished with this phase. Some components we're adding electrical upgrades, electrical line controls upgrades. We're adding a new thickener building. We're doing some renovations to both existing digesters system for those digesters. We've had an existing pH and alkalinity control that we've actually removed and are replacing. A lot of staff time. This will be an automated. There's some existing piping being removed from the site, and we're also adding some to get down to our new effluent filtration and ultraviolet light disinfection building. This will replace the need for the chlorine contact. Control building, here's a photo from back in October. Basically the original with the base foundation remaining. And you can see some existing forms there on the first photo of some new concrete slabs being poured. And then on the new photo here on the right is a photo just from last week of the completed building, and you can see the area there for the chemicals added at this point in the process. Thickener building's near complete. This photo from October shows at that point it had 4 walls, but not yet a roof. Now we've got the roof on. It's actually a 4-part metal, 2 layers of insulation, and then a waterproof membrane. We've also got, if you look at that first photo, you can see the thickener drum that Stephanie's pointing to there. That's the main component of this structure. However, there are 4 air blowing devices that are also in this building. There's a photo of the existing digester number 1. It's currently taking all of the process while digester 2 is being renovated. You can see digester 2 there in the second photo. You can see it's got a nice new coating on that to help with waterproofing, hole patching, crack patching. You can also notice the stainless steel pipe along the top and the 6 pillars going down. Those are the actual aerator process that we're using for the digesters, the old process. Here we've got a photo of the existing pumps. This one's still in use on digester number 1. You can see it looks very out of date. These are old piston pumps. They require a lot of oil and grease, and they're really messy. We're replacing those with these new pumps. You can see there that bluish green. That's our new pump. Very small, much more efficient. It runs on a variable frequency while limiting the electric, helping us with cost savings, and it takes up a lot less space there. Here we've got a photo of the filtration UV building. Here the workers are placing steel reinforcement. That was back in November. And we've got almost all the concrete poured there, approximately 3/4, and we have equipment on site. Being so close to the treatment plant, we've had a big effort for dewater. Here you can see Stephanie's pointing out some wells that go down. This is at the UV filter building, where it's especially watered. Those wells go down to pumps that are pumping the groundwater out into the orange tubes, which come out into this erosion control area tractor. Basically, all the water goes through an erosion sock to help water, and then goes through a series of check dams to make sure we've got the clean. And that last photo there just shows the ditch line leaving the site, an additional check dam.
Will that be an ongoing process, or will that cease once the building is finished?
Once currently our project's within schedule. That should be done by January.
Good. Council, questions?
I've got
Sure.
It's not relating this project here, but the other project, we approved this project, we also approved one for the Canyonway Pump Station. Is that ongoing, or
That's currently still in design.
going to design?
Yep, we're nearly complete with design, and we're going to be giving you an update in a
Okay.
few weeks on that, too, that project.
And the second one is, we bought a bypass pipe for when we had the landslide. It's still sitting on the road down there.
Right.
I'm worried that when it comes springtime and the county comes by and starts doing their hedgehogging and things like this, we're going to lose that pipe.
Have we determined a semi-permanent storage location for that yet, Stephanie?
Yes, we have. It's it's on our list of things to do. We're gonna break it up a little bit and store it at the plant, and some of it we're going to use at the water plant. So we just have not gotten to remove that yet, but we are going to do that shortly. It's definitely on our list and plans to do.
Since you brought that up, we also had a staff debate, or discussion rather, I shouldn't say debate, on whether or not we should sell that, liquidate it, and decided that we had enough potential of emergencies and enough uses for it that it really was cost-effective to keep it. And so it does have to be cut in order to be moved, that length of distance. So we'll be doing that soon, I guess.
Just where I rode up to the Schooner Creek the other day, I noticed it's still sitting there in a ditch. I'm afraid somebody's going to take a chainsaw to it or something else like this, and then we'll lose whatever value we have left in it. Thank you.
Other questions from council?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question and a comment. With ACE providing the on-site construction supervision, when was that decided?
That was when...
The only reason I'm asking is because if it was a council idea, I'd like to help take credit for it. I had nothing to do with it. But I think that's a tremendous idea.
Everything good that happens is credit to council.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And it was done at the time we awarded the contract to ACE, and we did that in a public meeting.
You know, a job with that complexity, I think having a person there all the time is spot on. And, you know, so that you try to catch as many things as can be looked at as time is going by. And my comment, and I'm not trying to, I've already taken up too much time with my question, actually, but one of the first times that I had a chance to talk with the mayor when we were both on the council was going through the wastewater plant. And I had told him, you know, this is what separates us from the third world countries. I mean, if you've lived outside of the United States, I mean, it's a real privilege to be, you know, part of something that has the ability to interact with, you know, what is the essential things that this facility provides. So,
thank you. Yeah, good comments.
Lincoln City's doing a good job.
Councilor Ward, any? Yep.
That was a very encouraging progress report. I'm glad to see that we're on schedule, time schedule, and I'm glad to see that we're within budget. Thank you for helping guarantee that.
While we're on that, I would like to give council an opportunity for a tour. Now, this time of year, you really don't want to go out there during or after a big rain because of all the mud and whatever. So what I'd like to do is when we see a clearing coming up a couple days in advance, throw out an invitation, see how many can make it. If a majority can make it, we'd schedule a tour and also of the new wastewater shop building at our city shop. We could do both in a couple hours.
Be a good idea. Yeah, I'd welcome that.
That would be fun.
Joe, before you leave, one of the last pictures you showed was the, you don't need to pull it up, but it had all the rebarb.
Yeah.
Is this for seismic, or is that to create the shape, or it just seemed like a lot of rebar.
It is quite a bit of rebar, but given the soil types that are around it. It is for seismic
Is it?
and just to help protect the structure in general. It's not actually giving any shape to the...
Okay. More seismic. Okay.
There has been a lot of work put into the design on the seismic issue because it is a critical facility.
It is. Yeah. The other point that I think sometimes gets missed on the public is this change out of the chemicals to the help me ultraviolet. Real significant. Am I correct in that? Do you care to address that piece of this equation?
Sure. Well, the contact building, let's see which actually is this building that we're looking at all the rebar with installed. It's replacing chemical fuel for, typically we add chlorine at the end to disinfect the effluent that's leaving the plant. In this case, in our new upgrade, we're going to be disinfecting using ultraviolet, which is a lot safer. There's a lot of, there's a lot of environmental benefits. Certainly for Lincoln City, delivery of chemicals is an issue. It's a big issue over here on the coast in terms of cost and safety and coordination. So this UV is going to give us a lot more independence and a lot more surety, and it will be a really nice product, and it'll be safer for the crews also to be out there working with.
Yeah, that's to me a significant upgrade and a very positive upgrade.
Another piece of that is the fact that we don't have to transport chlorine across Schooner Creek Bridge, is it not?
Exactly. And we will not be having to deliver that chlorine. And again, that was a significant operating issue. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for the update. Nice to see it's on time and under budget. Thank you. Let's see. The next agenda item is City Manager Report.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item is what I'd like to do, unless council has other ideas, is to discontinue 5 hours a week at the community center operation between 8 and 9 o'clock p.m. each weekday. We just don't have enough utilization for that. And equally important, we don't believe that we have enough potential to grow that hour. There's other times where we don't have as much utilization as we'd like, but we believe that we have potential for those hours. And our plan is to continue to market and grow the customer base over time and the visitor base over time. These hours just aren't going to pay. And so, without your objection, beginning March 1st, on weekdays only, we would discontinue the hours between 8 and 9 p.m.
And those would be, as always, we're open to hearing a counter-argument down the road, or somebody wants to come to us and can give us good argument to why the hours should be expanded.
Well, sure, except that for a period of time now, beginning March 1st, we would advertise in the Fund Guide. We can always change it online pretty quick, but the Fund Guide goes out, and there's a lot of people sitting on that throughout the period of time. The next opportunity then would be September.
Right. I guess all I would make for the audience is that a reduction now doesn't mean that you can't add in the future.
No, that's true.
So we're open to that, but much like this case was built over a long time of tracking warm bodies in the facility, and would need something as substantial to expand.
If we can find the justification, I mean, I'd love to keep it open 24/7.
Right.
If we could make it pay to do that and have enough interest for more hours, absolutely. Come to us.
Any questions of Mr. Rocker regarding this topic, Councilor?
Mr. Hawker, 5 a.m. to 6 a.m., do you see potential for that
Yes.
increasing?
Yes. It's an opportunity for a lot of people to, and it's being utilized during those hours.
Well, I'm looking at the chart, and it looks like it's utilized less than well, no, that's not true. It is more than the 8 to 9, you're right.
It's an opportunity for people that work a fairly regular 8 to 5 to get in, exercise, get cleaned up, and still get to work. I got to be honest with you, I couldn't do it.
But there are people.
There are people.
I've been there at that time. There are people there, so not working out, for heaven's sake. So,
My wife's one of them, but I had to raise the issue.
Okay. Ooh, you're in trouble.
so any other questions? A motion or what? Certainly consensus.
I don't even need that. If you wish to stop me, you just make a motion to overturn me, and we're done.
Unless anybody disagrees, I'd say thank you for staff for looking at it and go ahead and reduce the hours. Others? You're all right? Okay.
The next item is Richard is going to give a real brief on some of the things in the planning works. You need this?
Mayor and councilors, 2 times a year we try to bring sort of consolidated groups of ordinance amendments forward, and I just want to sort of introduce you to ones we're looking at this first time around, and so you know what may be coming down the pike. The first relates to our clear vision amendments. We have 3 different standards for what's called clear vision triangles, which is at the intersection of a street. You can see this yellow shaded area at the intersection of these 2 streets. In residential zones, that's required to be 30 feet along each of the property lines, and then connect the endpoints of that 30-foot line, and nothing is allowed to be in there more than 2.5 feet high. We want to look at ways of whether there's a need to change that, put a little more flexibility in, and whether we need to reflect different situations. Obviously, we have things like this, an opaque fence. You can't see through it. You can't see cars. You can't see bikes. You can't see pedestrians or kids and so on. But there's a possibility of a fence you can see through. Do we care how high it is as long as you can see through it? And things like trees and poles, if they're of a certain minimal diameter, maybe you can see around them, and that would be adequate. They're related to that. Also, question is whether you should be able to build over the clear vision area. If there's an area, if you can still see under it, see under whatever's built, like a deck or what have an elevated deck, whether that should be allowed. And related to that is where you have topography that already blocks the clear vision triangle. Should you be able to build in the clear vision triangle if it serves no purpose to prevent you, if preventing you from building there serves no purpose because it's already blocked by the topography. A second area you want to look at is the sign ordinance, specifically first A-frame signs. Right now, the way our ordinance is set up, they can't be in the public right-of-way at all, if it's not on the sidewalk, and they also, you have to have, they're allowed to be a maximum of 12 square feet, and you have to have that much available square footage, or available square footage of whatever the size of your sign is, in both your existing freestanding signs. So if you have like a pole sign and you're allowed 100 feet and the A-frame you want is 12 feet, then if your A-frame sign shouldn't be more than 88 square feet, or otherwise you couldn't do it. Or your pole sign shouldn't be more than 88 square feet. And also, you also have to have the available square footage in your attached signage. So there's two hoops you have to jump through in terms of your square footage. And so we want to look at allowing A-frames more broadly, whether they should be allowed on sidewalks and whether we should loosen it up a little bit to be a little more business-friendly in terms of allowing it with outside the required square footage that you have for attached and freestanding signs.
Mr. Townsend, would that include or be looking at, the Realtor open house signs that are typically A-frame? Would that...
The Realtors?
Yeah. Or
well, certainly one. The one you're allowed one at the property. Whether they would be allowed, like on 101, to direct you someplace else. What we've been thinking of is basically, out in front of your business. Whether it's out in front of somebody else's business to direct you someplace else is a broader question, and but certainly something we can look at whether you want to go that way or not. Also, with respect to non-conforming signs, such this sign isn't in Lincoln City, but it's an example of a sign that would not be conforming in our city. Replacing the sign cabinet well, you're not allowed to do a structural alteration to an existing non-conforming sign, and replacing the sign cabinet would be a structural alteration. It's proposed to a change to allow the cabinet to be changed as long as it doesn't get any bigger. So like here where it says welcome speed skaters, this kind of reader board could be, as long as it wasn't bigger, could be changed to an LED sign, for example. So to accommodate new technology and so on. Fourth is geologic hazards. You remember we had part 1 last year. Part 2 is looking at two things, primarily the cost of peer review, which in the past in the one time that we've done that here in the last 12 years, I think, we passed that on to the applicant, and we would be proposing to change that to be a city cost. And then also the way our comp plan and ordinance are set up, there's some geological hazard maps from 1977 that if they show a hazard on the property, we're required to require a geotech. And we're proposing to actually change that to, it would be sort of advisory, that if it shows that, then we can require a geotech, but not necessarily require it. So it'll be more advisory in that sense. And that's because this is the kind of thing that's on the map. This red arc here is minor slope sloughing is how that's mapped. And the question sort of is, what does that mean? And where's the problem? Is it on the line, on one side of the line, on the other side, everything down here below it, or which way is below it, and that kind of thing? So we just want to get those sorts of things clarified. Then our parking standards. We want to make sure we're in compliance on those with the ADA and our parking standards. We believe that we are, but we want to make it more clear and just make sure we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's in that regard. And we're working closely with the Public Works Department on that.
Mr. Townsend, could you go back to that?
Sure.
The striped area is on the passenger side in this case, isn't it?
The van accessible, your first ADA parking space has to be van accessible. Has to be for vans, and the aisle, the crosshatched area here, and the first one should be on the right side of it.
For vans?
For vans.
And
obviously, there's at least 2 and maybe 4 accessible parking spaces there. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's on the other side of those 2 blue signs. If it's also blue on the other side, so 2 of those would have the crosshatch area on the right, and 2 of them would have it on the left.
Automobile spots are not required to have it on the driver's side?
No, not required to. Just van spots are required to. And the next thing is drive-ups. Right now, they require a conditional use permit in a general commercial zone, and we don't mention them in the recreation commercial zone. We just want to make clear that they're also allowed there, but also as conditional uses in that zone as well. And actually, there's two of them in this picture, one at the coffee and one at the bank back here. We do distinguish between a drive-up and a drive-through, and the coffee is a drive-up, and the bank one is a drive-through. Then duplexes in the general commercial and recreation commercial zone. Single families are called out as allowed, but duplexes are called out as a conditional use permit in the general commercial zone, and they're not called out at all in the recreation commercial zone, even though they're allowed by right in residential zones. So what we're proposing is make it clear that duplexes would also be allowed in these two commercial zones as a matter of right rather than as conditional uses. Site plan review, we want to take a look at that and make sure that we're not capturing things we don't need to capture and put it through site plan review. There's some small projects that have been gone through that by the letter of law are required to go through site plan review, but it's a lot of time and effort for applicants for not much benefit for the city. So we're going to take a closer look at that. So what is a church? In this particular case, that's a church. But they are conditional use permits in the R1 zone and in the general commercial zone. But the question has come up, like here, this also is a church. It's a storefront church. And should storefront churches have to go through the same process, same conditional use permit process that a freestanding church would have to go through? And sometimes there's a good reason for it. If you're in a shopping facility and you're having activities that dominate the parking, then it may be an unfair thing. So there's good reasons both ways of doing that, so we want to have a full discussion on that. Schools, we also want to look at that. Their conditional use permit in the residential zone. And, in fact, all but the school in this building in Lincoln City, all schools are in an R1 zone. Should they continue to be conditional use permits, or should some aspects of changes to a school that's already been permitted not have to go through conditional use permit? Or possibly also, should there just be a whole new zone for schools and public facilities or what have you that is different? Then garage setback. Right now in the R1 zone, or any place where we build single-family home, except for the RR zone, you have to have 20 feet in front of a garage or carport, unobstructed from the ground up. In other words, you can't build anything over that 20-foot setback, even though the rest of the house could be set back 5 or 7.5 feet. And this particular deck over the setback area was allowed by variance. But should there be some allowance for some intrusion into that 20-foot area? The reason you want the 20-foot area, the reason it's been put in, is so that you're able to see clearly when you're coming out of the garage, getting on and off the street. Also, frankly, when the garage is filled up with canoes and everything, there's still a place to park. What can happen, and what has happened in places that don't have the unobstructed from the ground up, is a deck gets built over it, and then some wind protection, and then eventually it gets closed in, and your garage will just move forward 20 feet, and you lose that safety thing. Another thing that's come up, that's been brought up actually by a member of the public, was whether we should allow some limited commercial use in residential zones. This is an example of one such thing. Actually, you can see that there's a house here, but this is a little market on the side here. The idea behind allowing them is to promote a more walkable neighborhood, so people don't have to get in their car and drive to the store or whatever, or have like a coffee shop that can be sort of a neighborhood gathering point, and that kind of thing. I like this one in that it's a mixed use. In other words, it's the business owner presumably is living. It's kind of like living over the store. And it's sort of an expanded home occupation in a way. I would think if this is going to get any traction, it would have to be, again, extremely limited. And I've seen that where it's got to be on a corner, and it's got to be on either a collector or an arterial, and it can't be within X hundred feet or X thousand feet of another one. So to really limit it, so we don't end up getting a lot of them into the residential neighborhoods. And finally, one was on temporary uses. Now, I did lie to you in the memo I sent you. I said that we discussed all these with the Planning Commission, and this one was not on the Planning Commission's list as it came up more recently, and so I wanted to include it here tonight. We don't have anything that explicitly allows temporary uses, particularly in the residential zones. So we wanted to be able to have something clear on that, just on what's allowed and what's not. This happens to be an outdoor sculpture show, and it's a very big one. In fact, it's the world's biggest one in Loveland, Colorado. But there's things like the Renaissance festivals or what have you, salmon bake, whatever. So those are kinds of things we want to be able to try to address. So that's what I have for what we're hoping to bring up.
Mr. Townsend, the neighborhood commercial in our zones, the example was a good one, and we have a mixed use zone now that we would encourage commercial and housing.
Yeah, in all our commercial zones, we allow housing. We allow mixed use in all our commercial zones. We also, we require it in Taft, for example, along 101. The other way we don't allow right now, except for so-called home occupations, which is basically something, it can't look like a business. And you can have you operate your consulting business out of your house or your travel agency, as long as you don't have signs, as long as you don't have people coming there, you don't have employees other than family there.
Any questions? Or now these are going to get done in 6 months, did you say, or what's?
Yeah, within the next 6 months, we want to bring some of them can go into one ordinance, and it can be handled very quickly because some of them are very minor. Others, obviously, are bigger and will require much more debate and consideration.
Mr. Townsend, with regard to that clear vision amendment, the last slide you had was a topographic barrier, a hill on the corner, basically. What could you imagine somebody building there?
Well, if the whole lot is high, why not build a house there, for example? It can be set back 5 feet or 7.5 feet from the property line. It would basically be up in the air.
Okay. Thank you.
Make more of the lot area available for building on.
Okay. Well, that should keep planning and Planning Commission busy for a while.
Yeah.
Nice to know you
fill those empty moments.
Any other questions from council? Great. Thank you, sir. Thanks for the update. It's always fun to see what's on the agenda.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. On the workshop, two things. One is I would like to, and this is really up to the Urban Renewal Agency, but I think you have an inside information on what I'd like to do a workshop, urban renewal workshop, not a regular meeting, an urban renewal workshop 2 weeks out at, for an hour and a half before the council meeting, so starting at 4:30. Our normal urban renewal meetings last an hour. We start normally at 5, finish up at 6 for the council meeting. I'd like to start that at 4:30. The proviso is if we have anything that comes up on an executive session, we would either have to do that earlier, say even at 3:30, or take a break during the meeting or after the meeting. So I guess I need a nodding of heads that you'd be willing to do that.
So that'd be,
if you were the urban renewal board.
that'd be March 12th. Is at 4:30 for a work session with urban renewal.
Right, and that's just to look at where we're going to be or what we're going to do for the last few years of urban renewal.
Yes.
All right.
work?
Everybody okay?
Yeah.
The other one is I'd like to postpone, and I'm sorry I don't have the date right now, but I bet Kathy can
14th?
Postpone the affordable housing. We're just a little bit overloaded right now, and I don't think we could do it justice in time. I'd like to come back to you at another meeting with another date on that. I think there are some timing issues, and I don't want to put it off too long, because there may be some opportunities that we want to be discussing sooner rather than later, but it doesn't have to be that soon.
And that'd be the work session we had planned for March 14th. So
we're just kind of immersed right now in a lot of issues, and the budget is now starting in full swing, and I don't feel we can do it justice.
Hearing no objection.
Okay.
All right.
And the other thing, Mayor, I need to really come back to the issue that we talked about before under G9. I'm sorry, under...
7, F7?
Yes. I think it started to come from the Salmon Drift Creek Watershed Council, who was, I think, looking for an endorsement of our watershed initiative, but also from staff saying, hey, we kind of need that on the OWEB grant application to have a general backing of council. Again, not a budget appropriation to spend money, just a general direction by council that we should continue to pursue the issues that we were going through at the workshop.
And this would be the second phase that we neglected, which was proceed with the watershed initiative planning process.
Which is a plan, to develop a plan, and again, to support the work of the Salmon Drift Creek Watershed Council. I think is doing a great job, and our OWEB grant, and in general.
So is that by motion, or
I think it
would be helpful?
I think it would be helpful.
Okay. Any discussion? So I neglected this earlier when we had...
Well, I should have said something, and
So I'd entertain a motion for us to endorse and continue to proceed with the watershed initiative in the planning process of it.
Yes, I'd like to make that motion, Mr. Mayor, and it probably can't be as open-ended as, but does that cover everything? You just, I mean, if they have any concerns in the future, I guess, or if something would be more helpful in the grant application in the future, we could maybe attend to it then. But
yeah.
Well, we've approved the proceeding with the grant application, and this would be the overall endorsement of the planning process that's the bigger umbrella over the watershed.
And this is continuing to work with the Forest Service, work with Salmon Drift Creek Watershed Council, develop plans for protection of the watershed. And, of course, obviously, would keep you informed along the way, and you could give us direction along the way.
Mr. Mayor?
Please.
But Mr. Hawker, did you not just say with this second part that would be beneficial to the grant application?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so I would
you're
like
okay.
to make that motion.
You're with that motion?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for endorsement from City Council to proceed with the watershed initiative planning process. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed with the nay? Hearing none?
Thank you, Mayor, and I do apologize.
Nope. Anything else?
Mayor, that's it. Thank you very much.
And City Attorney, anything? You all right?
Nothing.
Okay, moving on, then the next agenda item, we have an opportunity now for the public comment. This will be an opportunity for the public comment on the proposed new late fee for vacation rental dwelling permits. Staff
Mayor.
report.
The VRD ordinance authorizes the imposition of a late fee for late VRD license renewals, which, as you recall, the people are required to renew their VRD license annually. We don't have such a late fee, and would like to have one established for two reasons: principally to discourage or to encourage people to be more timely, and also to offset the extra costs associated with late VRD renewal applications. We've worked really hard to develop a streamlined and relatively inexpensive way of getting the more than 10,000 notices that we have to mail out on VRD renewals annually, get that cost down and get the lowest postage cost we can get, and also get the printing minimized. And when people don't give us timely renewal applications, it throws a monkey wrench into the works for those particular ones. The vast majority of people do give us timely responses. I think we had 303 applications this year, and I think only 22 were late. But it's not insubstantial, though, still.
Any questions?
Asking for $150 fee.
Yeah, the amount is $150. Any questions from council?
I do have a question.
Sure.
Mr. Townsend, you referred to inspections of VRDs. Who does the inspections?
Timothy Novak.
And are the requirements for VRDs the same as those required by hotels and motels?
No. Well, actually, to be honest, I don't know, but we go in. We don't do inspections on hotels and motels. We do it on VRDs. I can't tell you whether exactly what like their fire code requirements are and so on, but offhand. But we do have them for VRDs, and we have trash requirements and parking and so on.
Does the state oversee hotel motel inspections?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Does the county?
Isn't it
Virtually certain the answer to that is no.
Well, if they have a restaurant, that part would be.
Yeah, the health department.
And they may have a complaint-driven system, I'm not sure. And the fire department does have jurisdiction on commercial buildings.
Do we know if they have a inspection program?
Well, they have a fire marshal. I'm not answering your question. I'm sorry.
I think the fire marshal has sole jurisdiction over that inspection.
Mr. Ellingson, can you enlighten us at all?
I was afraid you were going to ask me this because I haven't paid attention to it for a few years, but I know some of our units have kitchens in them, and that requires a look at, by an agency, what is going on there relative to how things are stored. And also in our laundry facility, that is inspected. But, and that's probably not answering your question. So I would be happy to come back next meeting and have the current information for you.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Or maybe I could call you.
That'd be fine.
That would be all right.
And we can check with the fire department and see what kind of inspections they do. Part of our inspection is life safety. They test the smoke alarms, for example.
Oh, Mr. Hawker, may I also, I didn't mean to interrupt you, I forgot our swimming pool inspection.
Okay.
And that's an important inspection.
I think that's the state.
Yeah. That is looked at.
Well, we'll check with the fire department and see what they do.
Along with the hot tub.
I mean, we're looking for things like people sleeping in areas that have no way out, no smoke detector. I mean, a lot of this is life safety. In case of the newer VRDs, there's also the parking and landscaping requirements that we have to check. Richard, what else do we...
Actually, Timothy's here.
Good evening. So the inspections are a combination of, primarily it's the smoke detectors. Particularly in a lot of the older homes, they weren't compliant. I went through, as the ordinance is written, every 3 years, re-inspect. In between, I just have them confirm that they've tested them and that they're in the proper location. I can tell you that I was amazed this year how many smoke detectors still had not been installed or had been incorrectly located or were dead, even though I had received 1 or 2 years worth of yes, they're in compliance statements. There's also the concern of the availability of parking, particularly when the garage is necessary to meet the off-street parking requirements. There's certainly landscaping, though that doesn't require, generally it's a more cursory overview. And then also making sure that there haven't been renovations, particularly additional bedrooms, put into the houses to increase the occupancy above and beyond what it was originally approved for in the land use approval, which is decided based in part on the number of bedrooms.
Thank you.
Mr. Hawker, since we have these concerns about safety in VRDs, but seem to have no jurisdiction over commercial buildings, how is that? Why do we ignore commercial buildings?
Well, I'm not sure we ignore them because, I mean, first of all, when they're built, we have building codes that they have to follow. And in general, if they're going to do work remodeling, for example, they're not going to generally do it themselves. They're going to get a contractor, and a contractor is going to get a building permit, and we're going to see all that. And they're not in residential homes. They're businesses. They're open to the public. It's not behind closed doors. I mean, I think there's justification. And again, the fire department has jurisdiction on it. Whether they're inspecting them or not, I don't know. But there's been a long history of building codes and improvements required under the commercial building codes. And so that's not been true with rental occupancy of single-family homes. I think there's a big difference.
One of the differences also is in some commercial buildings, depending on when they were built, they were required to be sprinklered. So again, the building codes would define a different level, maybe, of inspection. But we can find that out.
Homes weren't built generally to be rented as...
Right.
Okay. So...
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Can we, yes, Dan, let me take your question, but can I remind us that the issue on hand is a late fee for VRD, so as long as we're speaking to late fees on VRDs, I'd be glad to entertain. Now?
No, I was just going to regale you with some fire alarm knowledge, so I won't do that.
Maybe at another time.
We'll come back.
Go into late fees.
It's interesting, but Any other questions from staff regarding the proposed late fee on VRD? All right, thank you, Mr. Townsend. At this time, this would be the appropriate time for public comment regarding this fee. Is there anyone in the audience that would so like to raise the issue? Hearing none, seeing none. Thank you. Going to the next agenda item, which is actually the resolution. We have a resolution for approval. This is resolution number 2012-04, a resolution of the City of Lincoln City adopting a late fee for vacation rental dwelling license renewals submitted after the January 31 deadline or incomplete after the January 31 deadline. Any questions of council? The resolution was in your packet. You had a chance to review it. Hearing none. Councilor?
I'd just like to say that I think we're justified in putting a late fee on, given that we mail out approximately 10,000 notices annually, and this, without the fee, and the process is slowed down considerably. Hopefully this will facilitate it.
Certainly gives incentive.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I guess I have a question, if not an issue.
Okay.
And that's, of course, this is retroactive in the first year. And I'm a little bit troubled by that. I'm not saying we should never do any retroactive fees, but I'm wondering if we shouldn't change it to March 1st of this year and January 31st of every subsequent year. Now, planning may want to argue about that. No, you don't want to argue about that? Why not? Okay.
As I read this resolution, it wouldn't, because it's not effective until February 27th, it would apply if somebody submitted after this date, this year, but not prior to this time.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I too didn't see this going into a retro, but
okay. Then it's clear that we won't impose it until after this is passed.
Is that council's understanding?
Cool.
Okay.
Fair.
So I'd entertain a motion for approval of resolution number 2012-04.
So moved.
There's a motion with a second to approve resolution number 2012-04, a resolution of the City of Lincoln City adopting a late fee for vacation rental dwelling license renewals submitted after the January 31st deadline or incomplete after the January 31st deadline. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none? Thank you. Now, we have an ordinance. Ordinance number 2012-02, an ordinance redefining the boundaries of city wards so as to accord equal protection of the laws and amending Lincoln City's municipal code 1.08.010 as amended by ordinance number 2003-15. Welcome back.
Thank you. At your last meeting, you decided to go with option B for redrawing the ward boundaries in response to the new population information we have from the 2010 census. We went through the guidelines. There are 7 of them. They were established by the committee on the Citizen Involvement Committee in 2000, and the council did not take exception with any of those. We proceeded to redraw the boundaries based on those 7. This is the final map that we are proposing for adoption. It's in black and white. The other was in color. But you can see that the ward boundaries are as we depicted previously for option B. They are described in the ordinance. The description gets a little complicated toward the edge of the city where the boundary doesn't necessarily follow a street. So we do have, especially on this east side of the boundary between Ward 1 and 2, a description that takes you up the side of a tax lot and over and up to the street before it gets into a more obvious dividing line. When we provide this information to the public, we'll make sure that we include addresses or whatever they need so they know what ward they're in without too much confusion. And on the south part of the city between wards 2 and 3, we show a fairly simple line here, which is nice, along East Devils Lake Road over to 12th, and then it goes down to 11th Drive and over to the ocean. So if there are no concerns from the public about how we've changed the ward boundaries, I would suggest that the council adopt this ordinance that will establish the adjustment.
A couple of questions, if we could. Council, any questions now that that's... I noticed from my own notes from last time we had this, you were going to confirm that there was no ethnic issue.
I haven't been able to do that because we don't have any information about where the ethnic groups live or racial groups. We've been trying to figure this out from the census data that's available online, and Sandy Gruber, our GIS person, has I got a phone number for her, and she called, and after a week of trying to do this, she hasn't been able to, which I guess confirms the fact that we did not consider it in drawing the boundaries, and that is the guideline. I hope that anybody who has concerns about this will raise them this evening, but I have not heard any concerns.
Would you also remind us that this option B that we chose and you've reflected here took into consideration the anticipation of an annexation of Rhodes End, and that
right.
You'd indicated that it would just be in the future when that actually does happen, the boundary between 1 and 2 would be the only one that would have to be changed?
Right. The way we divided the population, we have in the proposal more of our population in Ward 3. So when we annex Rhodes End, which is 352 residents, we can divide that additional population by adjusting the ward boundary between 1 and 2, and we can leave Ward 3 as it will be adopted in this proposal.
Did you happen to play at all with that line? Would that fix, your description over along the lake where you were?
Oh. Okay.
Kind of the
well,
zigzagging?
no, I have not looked at what we would do after we annexed Rhodes End in terms of adjusting this boundary, but let's see here. Here's our proposed boundary is the difference between orange and tan. This is the one that we are now moving away from. So if we're looking for 150 residents, 176 actually, okay, we would have to find a combination of census blocks in order to end up with that, close to that result, and still try to have relatively straight lines. So I have not looked at that yet, but you can see what we'll be dealing with. I doubt that there will be much change in this area. All the additional population is coming from the north, of course.
Okay. Good. Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one thing I'd just like to mention for the public's benefit is we hear so much about redistricting difficulties in the state in other states, congressional districts, et cetera, that becomes very political. That had nothing to do with the recommendations, and there was no information from council indicating a preference for, as we worked through this process, there was no council people coming to us saying, hey, I really need this area in my district. None of that. It's as clean as it possibly could be, which is 100%.
Yeah. That's great. So then we would be in a position, and if you're so inclined, to approve this ordinance tonight. If so, I would certainly entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2012-02, an ordinance redefining the boundaries of city wards so as to accord equal protection of the law, and amending Lincoln City Municipal Code 1.08.010 as amended by ordinance number 2003-15.
2012.
Oh, okay.
Is there
I have it 02 on mine.
Oh, yeah, it is 02. Yeah, it's meant to be 02, yes. Okay, it's ordinance number 2012-02. Is there a second? Second? All right. We have a motion with a second to approve ordinance number 2012-02, an ordinance redefining the boundaries of city wards so as to accord equal protection of the laws, and amending Lincoln City Municipal Code 1.08.010 as amended by ordinance number 2003-15. Roll call, please.
Quant.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Ellingson.
Yes.
And Norikis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And then at this time, what I'd like to do is adjourn the City Council meeting on a temporary basis, if I could, so that we could reconvene as the Vacation Rental Dwelling Appeals Board. So consider us temporarily adjourned.
I think you're temporarily recessed.
Recessed.
As a city council.
Thank you. All right. And let's see, the first would call to order the Vacation Rental Dwelling VRD Appeals Board, meeting February 27th, 2012. Roll call, please.
Norikis.
Here.
Sprague.
Absent.
Quant.
Here.
Anderson.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Eggleton is absent, and Ellingson.
Yes.
Thank you. First order of business then would be to elect a chair for this year of this appeals board.
A nomination to nominate Mayor Dick Anderson as the chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Other nominations? Hearing none, then action to close the nominations.
So moved.
And
Seconded.
all right, we have all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we have a motion to appoint or elect myself, Dick Anderson, as chairman of the Vacation Rental Dwelling Appeals Board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then we need to elect a vice chair. Would open nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Councilor Alex Ward.
Sounds
I
good.
second the nomination.
All right. Any other nominations? Take a motion to close the nominations for vice chair.
Seconded.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have a motion to approve Councilor Alex Ward as Vice Chair of the Vacation Rental Dwelling Appeals Board. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, hearing none. Welcome, Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I now open the hearing on license appeal number 2012-01, an appeal of a decision of the Planning and Community Development Director denying renewal of a vacation rental dwelling license under LCMC Chapter 5.14 to Scott and Kathleen Kiver and Stephen and Tracy Crabtree relating to the residence located at 3210 Southwest Beach Avenue, map number 07-11-27-BA, tax lot number 10300. The appellants are Scott and Kathleen Kiver and Stephen and Tracy Crabtree. Are there any objections to the board's jurisdiction? Are there any board members? Are there any abstentions or disqualifications based on conflict of interest or personal bias or ex parte communications? Is there any objection to the participation of any board member?
No.
Councilor? Nothing? You're all right? Then the following is a list of the criteria that applies to this VRD license appeals hearing.
Municipal Code, Section 5.14.050, Standards for Issuance of License. Section 5.14.060, License Standards. Section 5.14.080, License Renewal. And 5.14.090, Appeals of VRD License.
May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, board members, I want to, before I get into the substance of this, I want to give you a little background. We're all sort of new at these VRD license appeals. Last year, you heard one, and what happened in that case was the applicant for the VRD got a land use approval. The land use approval then allowed them to apply for the VRD license, which is a separate thing. The license was granted, and a third party who felt that the license should not have been granted then appealed it to the board. The situation is different here. This time, got the land use approval. That allowed them to apply for the license. The license was granted in 2007, renewed in 2008, 9, 10, and 11. Then applied for renewal in 2012, and staff denied the renewal, and now the license holder is who's appealing the case. So before it was a third party, this time it's the license holder. The last time the appeal was about whether the applicant met the standards for the issuance of the license. This time the appeal is about the history of compliance with the license standard, whether the applicant meets the standards for renewal of the license. So the first time it was about they agreed to comply with all standards. Here is, did they comply with the standards? In neither case was the issue about the land use approval. Rather, both have to do with the license standards. In this case, the standards that are under 15.14.060 relating to 060 relating to renewal. And again, the question is whether staff was correct in its license decision. In this case, was the staff correct in denying the renewal of the license? I hope that helps. as I said, the appellants got their land use approval in 2007, and then got their license in 2007, renewed annually, and then this year applied for renewal. It was denied, and in the letter denying the approval, it said, the reason for the denial is the result of multiple and recurring violations of the standards of your VRD license. This is from Timothy Novak. It says, according to my records, parking and noise violations occurred on August 8th, 2010, August 21st, 2010, January 1st, 2011, and August 6th, 2011. Citations were issued for the latter two violations to Mr. Keever, the named defendant in both cases, and he was found guilty both times by a court of law. In addition to the above violations, my December 2011 inspection of the property with your local representative, Oregon Beach Vacations, revealed the following. The garage, a required off-street parking space necessary to comply with the parking standard of your VRD land use approval and VRD license, was locked from the driveway and was being used for storage and thus unavailable to renters. 2, the fire pit, which you had agreed to remove due to nuisances its location was causing for the neighbor, was still in place with burnt wood in and around it. There's 8 standards for renewal of a license, and 2 of them are relevant here. One says, requires staff to review the licensee's complaint log to determine the nature of the complaints, if any, and whether complaints were timely addressed by the owner or local representative. Where city records show more than one complaint about the vacation rental dwelling occupancy was received during the license year, including any complaints that remain unresolved, the applicant shall bear the burden of proof of demonstrating complaints have been satisfactorily resolved or the complaints are not reasonably applicable to the occupancy of the vacation rental dwelling. Here there was more than one complaint, and in staff's estimation, going back not just 2011 to 2010, it was like they felt it hadn't been adequately resolved. For example, after staff received complaints about the noise and smoke coming from people in the backyard of the VRD who were gathered around the portable fire pit, staff discussed the matter with the applicants, and they agreed to remove the pit in March of 2010, but in December of 2011, the inspection showed that the pit was still there. Actually, what I wanted to do, I should have done this before. I want to set this in and show you where we are. This is Nell Scott area. You can see Highway 101 running sort of diagonally on the right side, 32nd Street running across here sort of horizontally. Circled in red is the house we're talking about, the Nell Scott Strip down here, the Elks, or the Eagles, I mean. Zooming in a little more, here it is, and then finally zooming in closely. You can see it's a relatively small lot. It's 58 by 50, I believe. You can see, and this down here, this is the garage that's at issue here in this case. You can see the house. It's a historic house. Very nice. Again, here's the garage we're talking about. This was a photo that the applicants had sent us in 2009 when there was concern about the availability of the garage and showing their Suburban in it, so it shows it can hold a vehicle. This is a photograph that Timothy took in last December. This is the fire pit, actually the ring for it here, and this is actually belongs on top of that. You can see it's got burned wood in it. In response to our concerns, this is materials that Mr. Keever sent back to us showing the backyard, showing the fire pit is not there, it's gone, showing the garage available. So that's what we have. The second of the 8 renewal standards says that the property continues to meet the standards for parking, solid waste, landscaping, irrigation, and signs. As I said, when we inspected it in December, the garage was not available for guest parking. It was required to have one parking space per bedroom. This is a required parking space at the time of the inspection. There was beach toys, chairs, and various other things occupying the area, or occupying the garage, so it was not available for vehicles. After we sent the letter, the Keevers filed a notice of appeal and raised 2 grounds of appeal. I sort of interpreted their appeal. I'm pretty sure I got it right. The first ground of appeal is that the noise and parking issues have been satisfactorily addressed. They assert that they had taken several measures to address the parking and noise problems, posting many warnings in and around the house, and in the rental agreements to allow the noise considerations and to follow the noise considerations and the parking standards. And they say in the future they will reemphasize these measures. And they also say they did remove the fire pit and stored it in the garage, but a guest found it in the garage and brought it out and used it. But they have since completely removed it from the premises. I guess the question that we looked at the situation as it was at the time, and we had 2 parking and noise issues that were sufficient to warrant citations. In both cases, there were guilty verdicts and fines imposed, and we feel like at the time of the decision was proper to deny it based on the number and seriousness of the complaints. The second ground of appeal is that staff was incorrect about the availability of the garage for parking, and the parking standard continues to be met. They said that the garage is locked, but the key to the lock is included in the set of keys provided to guests, and while there is storage of some items in the garage, there is ample room in the garage for parking of a car. And again, at the time of the inspection, it did not appear to be ample room for the parking of a car. So we recommend that you take testimony on this and then decide whether the staff's decision was proper or not.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Before we go any farther, and I didn't know how to articulate this, not having, I think I've been involved in one of these before, but I didn't remember the exact format. But I have had in the past very limited interaction with one of the owners, and I actually also, because I was here in the city building, went to a sanctioned proceeding, in the courtroom, and I feel like I could be fair and objective about this, but with our city attorney being here, she could probably advise me as to whether I should recuse myself.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning where you're stating a conflict?
Well, I was just stating that I have had a limited interaction with one of the property owners in the past, basically concerning a violation that came up at that time.
Well, the decision is yours. You've disclosed
I just don't want to not say something and then have us go through this and then have that be an issue, if I am supposed to state that.
Well, you've disclosed a potential ex parte contact. I don't know whether it was about this issue or is related in any way to operating a VRD. That's for you to determine. If you believe that there's a potential for bias, that's another matter, which may also be a reason to recuse yourself if you believe you may have some potential for bias that you could not get around. That's a personal decision.
So, Councilor, the decision is yours. You've disclosed.
Yeah, I would like to continue to hear this and then help adjudicate whatever is going to occur, during the hearing, because this is now, to state a support of or lack of support of what is being suggested here.
So if I'm interpreting what you're saying is you've disclosed you've met a property owner and you've had interaction with the property owner
on a very limited basis.
And regarding a previous issue regarding this house?
Yes.
And this house being a VRD, and so it was a VRD issue?
Yes.
Okay. So that would probably, though it's your decision, but that would have an indication of probably best if you would step down.
Okay.
You know.
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay.
You've done the correct thing, which is to disclose, and I think the issue is to make sure it's a fair proceeding to the extent we can do that.
I want to be clear. I think I can be fair, but just to err on the side of
yeah. No, I appreciate
the question. I will recuse myself. Would you like me to sit away from the?
Yeah, if you would, just a seat in the audience is fine. Thank you, Councillor, for bringing that up. Okay, so then is there questions of staff regarding the staff report? Any points of clarity? Evidently not. Nice job. This would be the time for the applicants to testify. Your testimony is limited to 15 minutes, including rebuttal, but not including time answering questions from the board. So, do you want
some packets
okay.
that we'd like to give to each of you?
If you could, it would be helpful to let me know now whether you want to save some time for rebuttal. That way I can watch the clock. And
I think so. I'll just go right into, I have it all concisely packed in here.
Okay.
15 minutes.
Okay, so after others testify, you won't have time to rebut any of their comments.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Sure.
I'll try to watch the clock too, though.
Since we've kind of set the theme, my name is Scott Keever, and serve in a public capacity on the board at OMSI, Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. We have some open items that include operation and acquisition of property on the Oregon coast. So I just wanted, with Councilor Ellingson's admission, I want to make sure I let you know. So appreciate your service.
Oh. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor and councilors, for being here to give us an opportunity to appeal the denial of our VRD license. I've got quite a packet here, but I'm going to run through it real quickly. But I wanted to give you a chance to see what we're talking about. My husband and I, Scott, my name is Kathy Keever, and my brother and his wife, Stephen Tracy Crabtree, own this home jointly. And have held the title to the home for at 3210 Southwest Beach since 2007. However, the home has actually been in our family since 1940 and has changed titles within our family since 1940 when the Bruckmans bought the actual home from the Nelsons of Nelscott. So, in fact, our family has been paying taxes on this particular property in Lincoln City and sharing this vacation home with our friends and family for 72 years. My brother and I grew up full-time on the southern Oregon coast, and we're about as native as you can get to the Oregon coast. We're thrilled to be able to share the joy of the beach with our family and with others who want to explore as tourists in Lincoln City. Page 1 and page 2 of your packets are the original 1929 photos of our home as it was built as a vacation home in the Nelscott Resort area. Then the third picture is actually a picture of how it looks today. The economy over the past few years has led us to opening the house to further gain some offsetting income to the expenses that we incur in maintaining the house for our family. This is when we employed Oregon Beach Vacations as the manager locally of the property for vacation renters. I've provided a map that was very similar to the map that you saw on the PowerPoint. Basically, I've highlighted our property that is on the southwest 32nd and Southwest Beach, right on the corner there with the Nell Scott Strip, and then also the two beach accesses that are available down on Southwest Anchor. Across from the street, just for your reference, I placed C's on them for complainant, are the two, as far as we know, the two people who have complained, which naturally would be closest proximity to our house, are across the street to the north on Southwest 32nd, and then right adjacent to our property, that we actually share a cinder block wall to the east. And so I just wanted to point those out where they are. The complexion or the description of our neighborhood is from Southwest 32nd. If you go south on Southwest Beach to the gravel one-lane alley that is actually Southwest 33rd, there are 15 properties in that one block. Of those 15 properties, 4 appear to be occupied by full-time residents, 2 of which I believe are monthly renters at this time, and the 11 others are either vacation rentals or part-time vacation homes. The fifth page there is what the house looked like originally, what it looked like when we took possession of it, and what it looks like today. Our home was one of the Nell Scott vacation homes built in 1929. It was one of the very few remaining log vacation homes on the Oregon coast. It was built for one of the relatives of the Nilsson family, who was one of the developers and the namesake of Nell Scott. The home was sold to a branch of our family, the Bruckmans, who vacationed in Lincoln City from the valley. All of our family stories had family recalling memories of coming over and friends who had access to the house for vacations over 65 years until we took possession of it. Pages 6, 7, and 8 are just really basically to let you know that our intention is to be good neighbors. We've taken this home and restored it lovingly and with some accuracy. We haven't changed much inside except to update the facilities, but the next 3 pages basically are some of the things that we've done to it. And like I said, in 2007, my immediate family continued the tradition of the family by purchasing it from the Trowbridges, who owned it. And many of you may have known, I think Mary Trowbridge was stationed at many council meetings for a long time, who in her aging years lived there quite a bit, almost full-time, but still maintained a home in Salem. But she was very skeptical of visitors to the home, and the home had fallen in a serious disrepair. So we undertook complete restoration of the logs, updated the bathrooms, and some general sprucing up without changing the character or the charm of our vacation getaway. We have spent, and then you'll see some interior shots just for your reference to see that it really doesn't establish itself as a great big party house. It is a small, quaint, no great room, and it doesn't even have a dishwasher, so it's not all that attractive to a big party. We have spent, here are some of the receipts we've spent. We've spent over $100,000 in restoring the house with new windows, log restoration, siding, landscaping, and other upgrades. The majority of that was spent locally, and so we feel like that we have been a good asset to the local economy. That's just part of the receipts that we have established. The neighborhood was originally designed as a vacation resort area, so we're not changing the complexion of the neighborhood. Starting with the location of where the Eagles Lodge is now, that was actually the Nell Scott Auto Park, and it was established for resort as a resort for people to bring and car tent camp there because of the great access to the incredible beach at Nell Scott. The reason given for the VRD license is being denied, and you'll see the denial notice on page 12, and then our appeal, which we also paid $150 to appeal to you, are the next 2 pages. There were The denial was for 4 complaints of noise and 2 parking violations over 4 years. We've been fined for 3 of these. One combined noise violation and parking violation was on New Year's Day of 2011, then 1 noise violation in August of 2011. For those 3 violations, we've paid $1,600. Since we've had our license in 2007, in the 4.5 years, 4 guests have had complaints from 2 of our neighbors. The occupants of the 2 homes who have complained about the vacationers in our home are across the street, as I had mentioned, and share the cinder block fence to the east. Both of those complainants are also part-time residents. On page 15, you'll see pictures of compliance to the issues that were stated by Mr. Novak. The back patio no longer has a fire pit. And we understand that that was a nuisance. We didn't think of it when we put it in. We thought it was kind of a quaint thing to have when you didn't want to run down to the beach. And then there is now complete access for garage parking there.
And there always has been.
And there always has been, yeah. So, have we had guests who are rude and noisy? Yes. Have we had guests that don't completely understand why they can't park in legal parking spots outside the home? Yes. But please let me highlight a few of the guests who have stayed and were great additions to the tourist fabric that Lincoln City attracts. These stories we have learned from the guest book entries at our house who have stayed in Lincoln City because of the unique experience of staying in a historic log home. We had a group of 5 ladies in their 70s from across the state who came together for 5 days to quilt at the house. We had one of the top 5 winners of the Lincoln City barbecue cooking contest for 2012 stay there. We had an aspiring author who was thrilled to read in our history write-up that we supply in the house that Ben Hur Lampman, a famous author and Oregon's poet laureate, once owned and was inspired to write in the house just across the street. A shirt-tailed relative found our home on the Oregon Beach Vacations website and came to stay because she realized it was the house of her great aunt. And she frequented it in the early 50s while her family was still living in Oregon, so we had a reconnection there. We've had guests from California, Washington, D.C., Alaska, Texas. We've had guests who have never seen the Pacific Ocean. We've had young families with grandparents and grandchildren staying under the same roof, which is difficult to do if you're in a hotel or a motel. We've had guests who have told us the greatest thrill they had was finding a float from the Finders Keepers campaign. On page 16 is one of our favorite entries from a child who stayed at the home. Some of these guests have made reservations for 2012 that we would like to honor. My point is that for every guest that has been asked to quiet down, there have been many more who have been respectful to the neighborhood and loved the opportunity to stay in one of Oregon's historic homes on the coast. By the way, none of our guests have ever been written a citation from the police or ticketed for illegal parking.
Or for noise.
Yeah, there's been no citations to our actual guests there. Page 17 is a copy of our complaint log that we're asked to file with the planning. I might note that I called the Lincoln City Police, and according to DJ at the Lincoln City Police Department Records Department, she has 1 police record on August 4th for a noise complaint. The police noted that the violators were outside and moved inside quietly, and no citations were issued. We were, however, issued an $1,100 citation, which we paid in full. If you go back to page 15 and look at the pictures of the garage and the patio, and this is actually one of them, the garage opens from the inside with a lever and hook. It is actually not locked from the front of the garage. It's sort of a castle style, which I find rather charming detail from the 1930s garage. I don't know of too many garages that actually have locks on the outside of them anymore. It is accessible from the side door that is locked with a labeled key found in the lockbox along with the key to the front door of the house, and that key has always been in that lockbox. It's always been accessible to renters. There was an accumulation of some detritus left over from my renovation that were kind of shoved up along the sides that made parking tight in the space, which Mr. Novak mentioned, and he was correct. And all of that was removed, so now there's plenty of space for parking, and we don't see any other big renovations coming that would fill it back up. Page 18 shows our parking plan. We have 4 spaces. We actually have 2 garages on the property. And then there's enough room for 3 cars in the driveway, but we mentioned that there's just 2 spots. Page 19 and 20 are pictures of signs that are in the home. They're located on the porch as you enter. They're located on the inside of the front door as you're leaving. They're located on the refrigerator and also on the back door going to the patio. Excuse me. If you go back to the picture of the garage and the patio, the second item from the inspection regarded the fire pit. As he mentioned, the portable fire pit was actually removed from the patio in March. The metal stand was thrown away, but the bowl was stashed in the garage, and a renter who had access to the garage, may have used it for a fire on the cement patio. After we heard from Mr. Novak about the inspection, we removed the bowl entirely from the location. We did notify OBV that the issues were remedied by January 1st, and I'm not sure if Mr. Novak was able to reinspect the property at that point, but you can see from the pictures that we have done that. I believe a major reason for the noise violations came from having a fire bowl on the back pit. It lent itself to gathering outside with raised voices, and since that's no longer an issue, I believe the noise will not be a problem any longer. We have also posted noise reminders in the house and on the back door to the patio, which you'll see on page 21 of your packet. Street parking is legal in the Nelscott neighborhood, so it becomes a challenge regarding guests who do not see any public signage that says no parking. Nelscott Reef is a very popular beach for locals and for tourists. You'll notice on page 22 is a copy of the Lincoln City website that does state that there is an issue that is being looked into about parking in the Nelscott neighborhood. In fact, they are thinking about using some of the Eagles Lodge for public parking. The next 2 pictures are pictures of the beach access parking in the neighborhood. The beach access has about 5 spots and 2 handicap spots altogether. But the sticky point here is that if a complaint is lodged to the city, we receive a violation whether the cars are from our guests or if they're just spillover from people walking to the beach from parking near our home. Our remedies for eliminating the noise and parking issues from the property are, number 1, we have Oregon Beach Vacations as our property manager, who has a dedicated staff and local office in Lincoln City. We run exclusively through them. They supply their names and personal numbers to our neighbors for them to call first if there are any issues with the property. Number 2, signs are posted in and around the house reminding and warning guests to use only the designated parking spots and adhere to noise curfews. There's also a large OBV sign that's hung over the front door, not very attractively, I might add. And we have employed TCB Security Services, who patrols the house and looks for violations proactively before they become a problem. And you'll see a letter. They weren't able to come tonight, but you'll see a letter in your packet on page 25. In addition, any guests through Oregon Beach Vacation are verbally told about restrictions and then reminded in the confirmation rental agreement, and those are the last few pages of the packet. So in the spirit of cooperation with Lincoln City, we don't want to be just complainers. We also would like to suggest some remedies that we think maybe should be brought up at some point. One of those is perhaps find the occupants of the home who are actually being unruly or noisy. There should be accountability to the individuals who are actually breaking the rules. The violations to the homeowner are not addressing the problem. In the state of Oregon, rental car companies are not liable for renters of their vehicles who speed or get parking tickets. The companies can go after the individuals who park or speed and are ticketed in the rented vehicles. Perhaps this is a message to the violators of the rules in Lincoln City that tourists need to be good neighbors too. Number 2, issuing parking permits for homeowners in beach access areas seems like a good idea to us. This seems to work in urban downtown areas in Salem and Portland, and it also works along college campuses where residential areas ring campuses and parking is very tight. maybe post signs that say by permit only, and then ticket those without permits if it's necessary. And number 3, post tourist-friendly zone signs in the areas that mix vacation homes and full-time residents. These could just be subtle reminders to be courteous. I truly believe that most people do not want to be discourteous, but sometimes vacationers do tend to let their hair down. So to summarize, we so very much want to continue to be great neighbors, and we continue our family legacy in Lincoln City for another 72 years and however many generations that will contain. Please don't let the 4 complaints over 2 years and the staff's recommendation for denial keep you from seeing they were earnest in our efforts, and do not believe that the history is reason to believe our home is a recurring problem. With over 200 nights of rental in 2 years, 4 complaints is 2% of the total. Granted, we are not perfect, but 98% we're getting pretty close. Being able to share our home by renting to guests allows us to keep this home. Without rental income, we will be forced to sell or at least rent the home from month to month, and would eliminate our ability to share it with our family and friends and our newfound friends who have used the house as tourists, as we have done for several generations. So I thank you very much for your consideration in renewing our permit and for allowing us to continue our tradition in Lincoln City.
Great, thank you. This would be the time for questions from council for clarification.
From the board. Excuse me. From the board.
From the board. The appeal board. Mr. Norikis?
Yes. No violations to the VRD would be new for the year. We don't have any violations this year yet, but that would be new for the year. Security checks on the house by the local security company actually will be year-round, not just during peak use.
We paid for additional services for this coming year, for additional patrols through Oregon Beach Vacation.
Right. Other than that, correct.
Other questions? Mr. Ward, anything?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I have a question, and that is, one of the signs on page 19 indicates you can park 4 vehicles, and the other sign in your house on page 20 says 3 vehicles. Which is it?
You can park 4, but they have 3 on one of them just as a safety precaution when we were trying to limit we had thought about applying for a permit for a 3-bedroom, but in fact the house has 4 bedrooms, so.
And 4 parking spots.
And 4 parking spots.
So your original approval was for 4 bedrooms and 4 parking spots?
Correct.
Thank you.
I think the question I had when I read through was what appeared to be the urgency or lack of urgency in correcting raised issues, the fire pit. And especially with property management on site, one would think would never see the fire pit again. Comment? When it came up earlier in 2010, 2000...
Of it being an
issue.
Potential nuisance.
Well, you would seem to, as I recall, you had agreed to remove the fire pit.
Which we did.
And it came back.
Yes.
Because it was in the garage.
It's a bowl.
I understand.
Yeah.
But, so the fire pit issue was not a new issue. It had been raised previously, and in your mind, gotten resolved.
Resolved, correct.
To the garage, of which is open for access to renters. Well, one would think that it would have been removed completely, thus not to attempt. And if absent that, certainly when it came back to the patio, after somebody used it, that you on a visit, property management on inspection, who would know that it's an issue, would have removed it. And it took the system to find it again, and
I think it was only there for that particular time. I don't think it hadn't been used continuously.
I understand.
Yeah.
The point being, back to my issue, is it appears to be a lack, just from, as I read the thing, a lack of effort on your part to really resolve that particular issue, get it off the table completely, absent somebody bringing their own fire pit, from the valley or wherever, or buying one and leaving it. But
That's a reasonable comment. So I think in communication, the sense of urgency may not have been conveyed to us from the city. So in an email from Mr. Novak, he specifically states, I also understand there is a small portable fire pit on the back deck, and this is March 22nd. The potential for smoke drifting into neighboring open windows may be worthy of your consideration. So where the city may be portraying that they've notified us or created that sense of urgency, the basis of the communication from Mr. Novak was not one that said, I'd really like you to remove it, there's an issue, the neighbors are complaining. It was really kind of the potential for smoke drifting into neighboring open windows may be worthy of your consideration.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what, we'll remove it. Well, we moved it to the garage, and it wasn't that sense of urgency that was conveyed to us from the city, because, quite honestly, as responsible neighbors, we would have taken action. For example, when we were notified of some garage issues or the fire pit in the back, we drove over the next day and cleared it out. So he took a picture on the 21st. It was our Christmas break, and we took a day, my wife and I, cleaned the garage, threw the fire pit away. The next day. That's how concerned we were when it came to our attention.
Okay. Thank you. What about, the other issue around the garage and the space? I found it interesting that upon inspection, no key, and whomever was assisting in the inspection, and yet, you've indicated the key is on a key ring, and
It's there, and I think Mr. Novak's entered it for the last 3 years prior to that using that same key, so I'm not sure what the issue was, but it's there, and as far as I know, it's always been there, so I'm not sure what the issue is.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess
very few people enter a garage from the front. The garage is actually, in fact, not locked. It's just blocked from the inside. You go inside and open it.
That's a picture of the garage looking at the door, so you can see there's a swing arm. So it's an older garage. You need to come in the door, open it, and then you pull your car in. So it's not your traditional raise it up and open it. And to Kathy's point, Mr. Novak has been in there probably 6-10 times. So
and a car would still park in there. The bicycles, I think, had not been put back on the side or at the end of the garage. And to the best of my knowledge, no one has ever needed to park in the garage. Very few people, you bring 4 cars to the
It's interesting that there's a picture of the fire ring, but there's no picture of the garage and inaccessibility.
Well, so you're questioning, at the time the staff inspection of the garage in December, the number and placement stored items precluded parking a vehicle in the garage. Moreover, the management company representative who accompanied staff on its inspection was unaware of any key to the garage door and was unable to locate one. He did find a key that unlocked the door between the garage and the house to allow the inspection to occur.
Right.
So I guess, again, your representative who accompanied the inspection. So I hear what you're saying. It just, as I'm reading the material, it sounds like your representative wasn't much help either?
Was not able to find a key to the front of the garage. They were able to access the garage through the locked door.
Okay.
That's not clear to me what it means, because there is no lock on the garage, and they were able to get in the garage. That's how they knew that there were.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure what he's getting at there, because they were in the garage through the locked door, so they had to have had a key.
Well, they went through the house, yeah.
No, the house is not attached to the garage.
I don't know where the key. we did find a key that unlocked the door between the garage and the house to allow the
that's-
inspection to occur.
And that, there is no door between the house and the garage.
Okay.
It's the patio. The patio
It's a
accesses
patio.
the side door, which then gives you...
So he was able to get in the garage, but he could not access these garage doors from the front.
From the front.
Which I'm not sure, that
Okay.
seems pretty standard type of garage closing to me.
Okay. I guess those were the two, let's see, parking, because that was the issue, I guess a concern if people couldn't utilize the garage. And since you did have the permit allowed for 4, all 4 had to be accessible. And that certainly is a congested area down there, as you've already stated, for parking at a premium.
Right.
So I think that was, okay. Great. Anything else? Questions?
I just want to be clear. So the garage was only accessible through the patio door, and we're talking that the front doors that would allow a car to be parked there wouldn't open. Is that? I was confused about that.
What I understood was the front doors that you drive your car through can only be opened when you're inside the garage and you lift the latch to open the
They're
door.
operational.
Right.
Don't park in there.
So you have to go around a side door.
But they were able to, so I'm not exactly sure. We'd have to ask him what door he was trying to get into with a lock.
So, any other, okay. And from what I could gather from the light and stuff, you used up your 15 minutes.
Okay. We're good.
That's all right. So no other questions, and I'll go for other testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then at this time, and I apologize, Mike Solstrom, I don't know, this would be, next is testimony in support of the appeal. So if you're in support of the appeal, each person may have up to 3 minutes. This is, well, this would be in support of the appeal. No one has signed up? Okay.
First of all, good evening. I'm Joe Murray. I am Vice President of River City Group, which owns and operates Oregon Beach Vacations. Let me first start off by saying...
Excuse me, could you state your address for the record?
My address is... my Portland address is 2 Creekside Terrace in Lake Oswego, and I am a part-time resident of Lincoln City on the weekends at 1435 Southwest Coast. The area in which I reside part-time in has a concentration of vacation rentals. Like my neighbors, we realize that garbage, parking, and noise violations are going to occur from both vacation rentals and permanent residents. Oregon Beach Vacations and its employees maintain a goal of keeping the smallest footprint possible in our neighborhoods. We deploy an aggressive screening process of each guest, regardless if the reservation is made online or offline. One of our employees actually reaches out to each guest and clearly states the policies that we have with Oregon Beach Vacations in ensuring that we maintain that small footprint on the neighborhoods. In addition to our pre-screening process, we employ a third-party service, TCB Services, to patrol and assist in the enforcement of those policies. Clear instructions are included in our check-in procedures as well as displayed in the home, as the Keevers mentioned. We also include parking procedures, quiet time hours, as well as garbage disposal procedures. The measurement of our success should not necessarily only be based on the prevention, but how we handle each and every one of those violations. We clearly continue to demonstrate our commitment to the city and the neighborhoods by working in conjunction with the city's enforcement employee, Mr. Novak. We've actually modified several of our operational procedures based on his request to ensure that we meet those qualifications. I highly encourage the city I highly encourage the city to renew the VRD application for the Keevers. In not renewing that application, you put the family at a potential financial risk, as they indicated, in an environment that families are already struggling. As I mentioned earlier, as a company, we are most certainly committed to ensuring that we keep that small footprint in the neighborhoods. We would like to say that no violations are ever going to occur, and that's not realistic to expect that from the city, from the neighbors, or from Oregon Beach Vacations. But as I mentioned earlier, our measurement should not necessarily be on the prevention, but on how we handle those situations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
May I ask a question, Mayor?
Please.
You mentioned a security service. Can you tell me what they do, how often they do it, what the responsibility is?
Absolutely. The security service is TCB Services based out of Newport, and they patrol the neighborhoods a couple of times during the day. They start the patrol at check-in time, and check-in time for us is at 4 p.m., and they'll actually make several sweeps to the neighborhood up until 11, 12 o'clock at night. So they have the parking information for each home, so they know how many cars are allowed at the home, they know how many guests are allowed at the home, and they clearly know what our age limit is for the home. Does that answer the question?
I'm not sure.
May I ask a question?
Okay.
How do they respond to noise complaints?
They will actually go up to the front door, knock on the door, and say that there has been a noise complaint. You need to keep the noise down.
How do they get the noise complaint?
From neighbors and via drive-bys. So if they drive by and they see there are several people outside late at night.
So the neighbors are given the contact information for that security service?
Can I 100% say that every single neighbor has that phone number? I don't know the answer to that, but on each of our homes, our sign is displayed with our phone number, so our phone number is located on those homes.
But you said neighbors could contact the security service.
Neighbors contact Oregon Beach Vacations, and Oregon Beach Vacations contacts the security service.
Okay.
Does Oregon Beach Vacations ever tell a renter that they need to leave?
Absolutely, and we've done it several times. We've actually evicted people if the noise complaints continue, if they violate the age policy. We have evicted several people.
Has that ever happened at this location?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Sir, given that we've got a listing of 4 citations here, August 8, 2010, August 21, 2010, January 1, 2011, and August 6, 2011, your policies don't seem to be working.
I would disagree with that. As I mentioned earlier, I would like to tell you that we could prevent that 100% of the time. We could prevent 100% of the time that there's going to be a noise issue, or there's going to be someone burning a fire pit on the backyard. We're not capable of saying 100% of the time that that's not going to happen. As I mentioned earlier, you have to look at our preventative measures, which we have preventative measures. It's going to happen, but also look at how we follow up on those issues. And to the point made earlier, if we got a noise complaint issue and got a subsequent noise complaint issue of that same guest for that same stay, we would advise the guest that another noise complaint issue from you would result in you losing your access to the home. So one noise complaint issue may be addressed for one guest, and then the noise stops for that guest. So these violations that you mentioned aren't clear whether or not there were several noise complaint issues regarding that same guest. As the Keevers mentioned, the complaints are constitute 2% of their rentals over a 4-year, 5-year period.
Thank you.
Sure.
I guess just a question on that, though, following up, does the security service keep a log as to the times they,
yes,
maybe not a called-in complaint, but, by their driving around, that they have to stop and quiet down or ask guests to be quiet?
It's a good question. I can't speak for the security service and what they do in their operations. It's my understanding that they do. We also keep that same information in our logs.
Because I could see why the police don't have a record of complaints. Because I can tell you from experience, it'll take a while or numerous before there's any real record of the complaints. And more likely, and I applaud your efforts with the security going through to quell it early. And I guess I'm wondering, though it doesn't indicate it, though, some houses are prone to create more noise, whether how they sit on the lot or the close proximity. And this one certainly is close proximity. So is just trying to get a little sense, more history of this particular house.
To answer the question, again, if it was one instance where a noise complaint was made for that one guest who may be staying for 2 nights or several weeks, that issue would be addressed and most certainly logged. But as I mentioned earlier, that if that same guest had multiple noise complaints, they would be evicted from the property. And logs are kept. Logs are kept from our side. Now, again, I can't speak 100% for TCB, but it's my understanding that they keep those logs as well.
Okay. I know, I guess I was reading some of the citations, there was issue around pets as well, and I'm assuming this house is open and available for pet owners. And as I recall, there was some of the complaints around animal running wild and issue. Any sense of that from your own?
Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
But again, those situations would be addressed. So TCB would have access to the number of guests. I wish you all could actually listen to one of our reservation agents clarify the policy with our guests. They actually make it seem to be a very unfriendly type situation, reviewing those rules and procedures. But again, people get down here and throw caution to the wind, have a good time. And unfortunately, I'm probably in the backyard making a little bit too much noise at 11 o'clock at night. That happens. We're sorry that it happens, and we take every effort to make sure that it doesn't continue to happen once it's identified, and even take a more proactive approach and do our best not to have it happen at all.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? None? Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else testify in support of the appeal? Okay. Then next is testimony in opposition to the appeal. Now.
Mike Sahlstrom. I'm at 3158 Southwest Beach. I'm the corner house across the street. I've made a complaint one time, but I've written out things 3 times for what's happened in the past. Little of my history in that neighborhood is I've been there for over 60 years. My grandmother was down on Beach about 3 houses from where I built on the corner there. Those houses were full-time houses back when I was growing up. And later on, when the people passed on and stuff, the kids took over and they made them vacation rentals type things, or they had them for family, basically. I know the situation pretty well in that neighborhood. Been there, like I say, 60-some years. I do live there full-time. I'm not a part-time. I'm there usually 5 to 6 days out of the week. I'm retired now. The story sounded really good, but until you're there, until you're at 1 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock at night, you guys outside there puking and yelling and screaming, and it wakes you up in the middle of the night. Well, most of the time, like I say, I'm not a cop caller usually. I'll go take care of it myself, and I just go over, and And believe me, 90% of the time, yeah, these are the nicest people in the world that ran over there. But then you got that 10% of the idiots. And you go over and try to talk to somebody who's drunk, and, you know, you end up getting the F-bomb thrown at you and all this kind of stuff, and you just don't want to put up with it. There's been several times where I just say the hell with it and pick up and go back, like I say, to my other place. I have in Lake Oswego. But, you know, the way I put it is, I live here full-time. These people, they live up in Lake Oswego. You know, if somebody moved across the street from them every weekend, a different person, and you had 10% of the time somebody comes home and they're screaming and all that, you know, wake you up and you're scared, you know, and stuff, you're ready to go outside to protect somebody or whatever because you think something's going on. It isn't right. I'm over here to live. I'm not over here to be a police or do whatever. I just want a nice neighborhood. That's all I want. You know, I don't want any more. As for the dogs, yeah, they have no... People come in from Idaho one time, and this dog, he's half husky, he ran through the neighborhood, picked up cats and threw them, and, you know, I went over and I told him, I said, hey, you know, not trying to be smart-ass or anything, but there's a leash law here, and, you know, your dog's, you know, going to the bathroom over, you know, on other lawns, and all. I said, you can't do that here. And, you know, their comment is, well, you know, we didn't know, and, you know, I guess everybody's got an excuse or something, but I'm just, like I say, I'm tired of getting up in the middle of the night going over trying to tell somebody to, you know, hold it down. You got to remember, our corner on the weekends, the casino stops its bus right on the corner. Well, those people, you know, they don't drink and drive, a lot of them. They come home at 1 in the morning and they're just loud, you know. You got to remember, when they have no family room in that house, so what they do is their family room basically is out back where that fire pit was. So when they go to go have a cigarette or something like that, they go out there. Well, if they've been drinking, there's always a loud person in the deal. And, you know, it isn't all wine and roses over there. It's in the parking. You know, they had, you know, one time we counted 33 people there in that place. And I went over and I told them to hold it down. It was about midnight, and I just says, you know, I'm going fishing tomorrow. I got to get some sleep. Would you please hold it down? And they were nice, and they went in the house and stuff. But the parking is a nightmare. The noise is more of a nightmare. I don't want to be the jerk of the neighborhood or whatever, but I'm trying to get some sleep and trying to, you know, have a life. I'm retired now, and if you got to worry about it every weekend, a keg comes in there or the box gallons of wine, you know you're going to, people are just letting steam off.
Yep. So. Okay. Any questions from the board? We're good. Thank you, sir. Thanks. Again, this would be the time for testimony in opposition to the appeal. Hearing none. Do we have anyone who's interested in neutral testimony? Observations? Hearing none. And sorry to say, we didn't save any time for rebuttal. So we can move ahead to... let's see, close hearing by motion. The question I would have is, can we bring staff back?
Yes.
Before closing?
Yes.
Okay. Sue, Mr. Townsend? I guess I was looking for a little more help on the parking garage situation. It seemed to be pretty cut and dry, you know, when I read the write-up, but in light of, you know, the key situation, and at least maybe I was going the wrong way, thinking that it was some parking space that wasn't being utilized fully with a lock key and access to the garage. But is anything different? Because what I'm led to believe is it's not through the front door or through the main car doors that you access the garage.
Apparently, that's the case, that access, you have to go in through the personnel door to be able to open up the garage door from the inside.
And so the access really isn't an issue then, if in fact the key is on...
If the key is there, then presumably there's access.
And go. And then the space. So is that still an issue? Did you hear anything, different regarding, this write-up? Your write-up on the grounds for the...
Let me pause just for a second there. I think you can ask Mr. Townsend any question that you have about the testimony he made.
Okay.
Or anything that's been provided. I'm not sure it's appropriate to ask him to comment on other testimony.
Okay. Can we ask Mr. Novak a question?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because, on the garage access issue, there were really two things that were brought up. One was the key, and I don't think that seems to be a big issue, because a lot of garages are not open with a key. My garage isn't open from the key, and it's open from the inside. I think that's pretty common. I guess what I'd like to know is how much storage, since we don't have a photograph of that, how much storage was in the garage at the time.
Good question. Mr. Novak, could you enlighten us?
Yes. In fact, throughout the floor was essentially, there were various items, beach toys, deck stuff, those sorts of things. It wasn't sort of pushed to the side and like there was in the middle. It seemed very apparent to me that the garage was being used to store things and not for parking. Considering this was not the first time that this issue had arisen at the Keevers property, I think I have on record at least 2 other times in previous years where I had addressed my concern that this needed to be available as an off-street parking space. So this isn't the first time it's come up. And whether or not it could be accessed to the renters and the key in the front, that was more of like, on top of the fact that it was being used for storage, it was like, well, can we even get into this place? So it just added on to the fact, but fundamentally it was being used as storage and it was not being used as parking, and it was not the first time that they had been told that it needed to be available for parking.
Would the amount of storage that was in there fit along the walls if it was properly ordered?
I don't know the answer to that. Okay. I don't know. I would have to take out a measuring tape, and it is possible.
Okay.
Could you flip back to the earlier picture of the SUV and the? Yeah. Kind of tight. Not. Okay. That's helpful. Trying to let's see. Then I guess this whole parking, the follow-up, lack of urgency, the letters and emails talking about the fire pit, and what appeared to be interpreted as a real lack of urgency on your part to get it out of the situation. You interpret that different, Mr. Novak?
It was just another, after seeing that the garage was not available, and then seeing that after they had said they removed it, it did convey to me an absolute lack of necessary attention to coming into compliance and bearing the full responsibility in a place where, it is possible that this house on a different lot and a different orientation with the neighbors might not be as much of a problem. But the reality is where it sits and how it sits has required them to take steps that there seems to be a lack of urgency in addressing.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, are you referring to an email dated March 22nd from Tim Novak to the Keevers, which I believe is about noise complaints generally, and says, I strongly recommend you bring special attention to this issue, and that there is one sentence about smoke may be worthy of your consideration, but I don't believe that that was the focus of that email. It was about other issues that had come up.
So I took it as well.
Any questions, further questions of staff? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, now I'd entertain.
Mr. Chair, I think it would be appropriate, because you asked staff to provide some additional information, to allow a minute or two for the Keevers, if there's anything that was new there that they would like to respond to give them that opportunity.
Be happy to do that. But Keevers, you want to make any comments?
That was for the additional clarifications that were asked of Mr. Novak and Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Council.
Thanks. I think to respond very promptly to Mr. Novak's ask us to remove the, said that it may stand and our since to neighbors. We did that. Said we were out there today.
And regarding the storage in the garage, it sounds like perhaps last guests, whatever they had been using, used the garage.
In there.
Good.
Some for vehicles.
And I would comment, too, that the log home, because of its historic nature, you'll notice it's not gray because we have to treat it every year. And so there were cans on the side related to that treatment that we removed as storing at our house, so now we'll bring it down with us when we do that. So absolutely, you could park in there. There are bikes. There was a wagon with toys in it that he mentioned. So, perhaps the last guest before it was cleaned out or we were over there had moved them around or just put them back in with the bikes, and it appeared as though you couldn't park in there. But
it's not spacious.
Imagine.
But we have no intentions of preventing people from parking in there.
Great. Thank you. Thanks very much. All right. At this time, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Moved.
A second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. You've heard the testimony, and this is a time where we would have time for discussion amongst ourselves. As I view it, there are, actually three opportunities here. One's a motion to deny the appeal, and that would be reaffirming the denial of the application of the license, or a motion to approve the appeal, which would reverse the decision made by Planning and Community Development, or a motion to approve the appeal in part and deny the appeal in part, being somehow specific as to something you wanted to do in there, rather than a straight yes or no. So questions, discussion, thoughts?
I have a comment, Mr. Mayor. While I appreciate the difficulty of policing recurring sets of strangers, I believe the planning director correctly denied the license appeal based on our Lincoln City Municipal Code, and I must support his decision.
Well,
I'm not asking you, just if you need any clarification or your thoughts that, going on at this point that you'd, to have a discussion amongst the board, because we can, or if you're so moved to make a motion.
well, yeah, I think, I'm inclined to uphold the planning decision on the license. I'd move to, would the language be on that too?
Motion to deny the appeal?
Deny the appeal.
So is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Is there a second?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second to deny the appeal. Any discussion?
I think that people should have reached out further to their neighbors like this. First problems they had, and then personal phone numbers and things like that. Across the street from my house, I have the person's personal phone number at home in Idaho. And things like this. Phone numbers, please.
Is there...
I don't have any doubt. I wanted to mention that I don't have any doubt that the appellants intended to be good neighbors. I think that they absolutely did intend to be good neighbors. I think that Mr. Novak creates a valid point that it may just be natural disposition of this property to end up being a nuisance if the number of people that end up going there. So I think maybe best efforts just aren't enough.
Okay. And Mr. Norikis, you're all right? You'd comment before. So we have a motion and a second to deny the appeal, and the reasons would be on the grounds that staff has already indicated the noise and parking issues have not been satisfactorily resolved, and the staff ability, let's see, about the ability of the garage parking and standards continue to be met for parking standards. All those in, let's see, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Quant?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
And Norikis?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So based on the decision of staff, the appeal has, or we're staying with the staff's recommendation and actual motion to deny the appeal.
I think the direction is that staff will come back with a final order for you to adopt on Monday, March 12th at your next meeting.
All right. Actually, if you'd want to come up.
I guess for future clarification.
Get it right into the mic, where it just doesn't pick up when you're in back.
Okay. I guess my question is for future VRD holders is, what keeps a neighbor who doesn't want a VRD next to them from exaggerating the issues? I don't deny that issues have occurred, but what if, for your sake, for your committee's sake, I'm in New Mexico, but don't want someone in my home? What keeps me from just calling Mr. Novak or the city and saying, wow, there's a rager there last weekend. There were 100 cars there, and when there's no police record, no one is asked to verify it. There are no pictures required. There are no statements required.
Excuse me. I think to ask a clarifying question about the process is one thing. Now you're going actually to testimony that was presented and asking a broader question without the ability of anybody else to respond to it.
Well,
so if it's a policy issue, that's something that the City Council may be interested in addressing separately.
So,
But not this board.
the issue has been resolved, or action taken on the issue.
Right, but
and I think at this moment, the individual is asking a valid question of the board as to, in my interpretation, so excuse me, but what would have we heard differently? What could have we heard differently?
And that's something I think is not appropriate to do right when you finished a hearing on a matter. Now you're questioning the process and the delivery of the testimony in the hearing that was just finished, but is not final until you adopt a final order at your next meeting.
But correct me if I'm wrong, we are going to have a council meeting here in a few minutes, and there's a policy question, and it seems to me, unless you tell me that's skating too close to the edge.
There's a question always in procedure. What stops somebody from coming in and just saying, I've had problems with this VRD for 5 years. Every night is a torment. That goes to the credibility of the witness and to the information they provide to back up their statements. I've watched the council and the board, and I believe the question is, are you evaluating the information that's presented to you? Rather than analyze this specific proceeding, if you have a problem with the way people give testimony or are allowed to give testimony, that's something about the process. However, if it goes to the issue of how the City Council weighs the credibility of a witness, that may depend in part about the information that the witness actually produces rather than testimony that may not be particularly substantiated. That's true in any process where testimony is provided.
So to make this easy, if you'll hang around after the council meeting and want to talk to me as an individual, I'd be glad to share with you my thoughts.
I do have one policy question, because in essence you're shutting down an ongoing business, right? So we've got 2012 bookings because of the timing. So I've got financial issues if I can't rent the property through 2012 because now you've shut it down.
Yes. So your question is what?
So the effective date is retro to 1/1, so I'm subject to penalty for rents that I've collected or need to return, or subject to citation for rentals that have occurred since 1/1?
Well, my understanding is you don't have a license in 2012. So you don't have a license in 2012 to operate. So what your policies are is your business.
Or the financial hardship that you've created with your decision.
I really believe that this discussion is inappropriate to the board, which is to hear the appeal, and to discuss policy or the effect of a decision is really not appropriate since you haven't adopted a final order. The appellants still have, they're able to talk with staff in great detail if they have questions about the process. There may be an appeal process. That's up to them. They may have rights of appeal, but it would not be appropriate to continue to question the board on that policy issue.
Okay?
Thank you.
Sure.
So with that, we'd adjourn the Vacation Rental Dwelling Appeals Board, and we'll reconvene into the City Council meeting. And our last agenda items under the City Council meeting is comments from council.
Citizens?
And, oh, I'm sorry, you're right, citizens first. Any comments from citizens?
My name's Carolyn Plummer. My company is Pacific Retreats Vacation Home Rentals, 3126 Northeast Highway 101. My comments tonight are really just real brief for once. Anyway, my first concern is with the selection of the conflict resolution person. I and many other people hold great hope in this process, and I'm never one to throw a wet blanket on anything, because I like to look at the positive and hope that once and for all we can resolve this issue. I mean, it's been a long, long time. I want to show you, I was going through some files the other day. These are all newspaper articles dating back to 1986 on this subject. The first reference of my name in the articles from testimony and opinions that I gave in front of the Planning Commission date back to 1987. So I have been involved in this issue for many, many years. I really would like to see us all find a way to resolve this. It's been a long haul. So with the conflict resolution selection, I don't for 1 minute question Professor Burke's qualifications or his abilities to bring some sense into this. And we all feel we love Lincoln City. We all want what's best for Lincoln City. We don't always agree what that is. And I don't mean this, Mayor Anderson, please don't take offense, but I could have predicted his selection after I realized that for almost a year that you have been visiting with Professor Burke on a regular basis. It says here that you have explained in detail what has happened in Lincoln City and where we're at with the polarization. Your personal opinions of the issue are no secret to anyone with regard to vacation rentals situated in residential zones. And I just hope that Professor Burke will be unbiased. He will come in with a fresh outlook. We all are entrenched, I think, to a certain degree in our opinions. My entrenchment may be 25 years old, although I would like to think that I have always been out to find common ground and solutions to existing problems, not find a problem looking for, or a solution looking for a problem. I hope that Professor Burke, as the process continues, he will become more familiar with the ordinance, with the history. For example, he indicates an ordinance allows homes to be used for vacation rentals on an occasional basis as an incident to home ownership. There is a definite opposite definitions of something being done on an occasional basis. There is no reference to occasional basis or occasionally in any ordinance that we have or ever have had. What it says is that the owner shall have the right to rent their homes out on occasions when they are not themselves using it. So occasions and occasional basis are two totally different meanings. So that's just one thing that I hope Professor Burke can become a little bit more familiar. Chester, you referenced the budget of $50,000 and hoping that somewhere money can be saved by perhaps lodging or meals or whatever. In recent months or the last year or two, there have been those who have purposely, in my opinion, set out to create a war between different lodging, types of lodging. And I think if this process is going to be valid and people are going to respect the outcome of it and the procedure, that you have to go further than normal to see that Professor Burke and his committee and his results are impartial and not favor one type of lodging or another, or one. In other words, he should not in any circumstances accept free lodging or give the perception that he is taking free or reduced rates. And I think for the validity of the process, don't try to save a buck, in my opinion.
Your time has buzzed, so...
And I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Good comments.
Oh, thanks.
Councillor Ellingson, you're more than welcome to come back and join us sometime. I know that.
I'm in asking.
Get a hookup.
I just want to make a couple comments. My name's Yvette Geiser. I'm the acting president of the Lincoln City Vacation Home Association. I think our ordinance has some problems. I think you've got a police department and you have a VRD cop. And I think they are doubling up on their duties. Okay? And by that I mean you have a police department that gets called for nuisances, right? And they come and they issue citations, right? Now you've got a VRD ordinance that has a VRD cop that comes and issues citations. You're doubling up here. Taxpayer money is being spent twice for two regulatory people to come and do the same job. I think that's a problem. The other thing I think is a problem is that if the police do not issue a citation, how does Timothy all of a sudden come up with a citation? And what is the burden of proof? In your ordinance, you have nothing in the ordinance that states how you are supposed to prove that these issues occurred. There needs to be burden of proof in your ordinance. You need to lay that out and say, this is what you have to prove in order to cite somebody for something. And it's not there. So I think you need to look at this very, very carefully. I think you need to look at your landscape requirements very carefully. I think you've made some mistakes in the ordinance, and I'm really hoping that when you come together for this dispute resolution thing that we're going to do here, that you look at those things in the ordinance that are causing these inequities and these problems, because that's where we're having the problems.
Good.
And it's the way it's designed, and it's the way it's been drafted. And I think that this has been a very unfair situation for the Keevers, because I don't think there was burden of proof. I don't think that Timothy Novak proved that there were noise violations. Where are the witnesses to that? Where's the proof? The police did not cite anyone. They're the police. Is Timothy Novak a policeman? And why do you have two parts of the city doing the same job? Okay? You really need to look at this.
Thank you.
And I'm appalled. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from the public at large?
Debbie Williams. We live at 2625 Southwest Dune Avenue, and we have a vacation rental that is owned by our larger family unit on Coast Avenue. And I don't have an issue one way or another with the process that went on here necessarily, because I don't necessarily know the facts. But what I do know is that I work very, very hard to make sure that I never have any problems at this property. One thing that is of concern to me, however, is the fact that cars have parked in front of our property that are not guests to my property. And I have had to track down skateboarders. I've had to track down contractors and ask them to move their vehicles because they're parked in front of my property. I've had to actually put a no parking sign in front of my property, and I asked Timothy if I could do that, and he said, well, it takes away from the amount of signage that you are allowed, which, oh well, I don't have a sign there anyway. But the city has created this 40-foot wide street on Coast Avenue there to allow for bike lanes on both sides of the street, neither of which have been painted. So nobody knows that there are bike lines there and people are parking there. I had to also ask that another no parking sign be placed on my side of the street, because the no parking sign on the west side of the street you can't see from the east side of the street. Well, they placed it, but it just says no parking. It doesn't have arrows to say along the whole street, and it just makes people think that they're not supposed to park right there. So they're still parking in front of my property. So that, and that has to do with my property in particular, but it opens up a larger issue for other vacation rentals. And when you're coming to the process that you're going to be going through, I can't think of the word at the moment, please keep that in mind. When you're talking about the burden of proof, how are people supposed to prove that those cars are not visitors to their property? Okay, so that's I'm right here and I'm really good at going down and shooing people off the street, but not everybody can do that. So that is something that you should probably take a look at, either by, I hate to see more permits and that type of thing, but something so that people will know that that is or is not somebody, a guest at their property. Okay?
Good points. Thank you.
Always have a cookie at bedtime.
Good evening. I'm Don Williams, 2625 Southwest Dune. I'm before you today as president of the Bay Area Merchants Association. I wanted to say thank you personally, because I didn't get to do it at the last meeting, to Mayor Anderson for last Wednesday's meeting with the representative from the Parks Department. We had someone from the State Parks and Rec, whatever their title is, give a presentation about any proposed rule changes as to the use of the parks and definition of the area they were in control of and the like. But it was very encouraging, very interesting to be part of that, and I just wanted to say thank you again, and to say thanks to members of BAMA and everyone who showed up, and also to encourage people to pay attention to these things. These issues will have an impact on your enjoyment of parks through not just the coast, but throughout the state. So I thought it was very productive. Looking forward to future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for those comments. Still got time for more comments? All right, then moving ahead, we can comments from council. Nothing. Councilor Ward?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good, thank you.
Oh, jeez. Mr. Hawker, would it be appropriate to maybe announce to the public the Easy Pay system snafu that we had?
You bet.
Not that we're flawless, but...
Well, our contractor who handles the payments of our water and sewer bills online, those customers that pay online, a certain number of those had their payment credited earlier and than it should have been, I guess. And though Easy Bill Pay has contacted those customers, I believe there was 130 of them, 131, something like that, and given them the choice of a refund or let the credit ride on the next bill. So we didn't know about it, I believe, until we got a customer complaint. So it's really useful if anybody experiences any problems like that to let our utility billing department know right away so we can jump on it. I think overall the service has been really good, and I believe measures are being put in place to see that doesn't happen again. So I don't think any real harm was done unless I've missed something.
Yeah, and thank you. That's my point, was really to let people know that things do occur, and actually we are very appreciative and encourage those who are affected on situations like this to let us know.
You bet. Because
often we don't get the information unless a citizen lets us know something's not working correctly. So appreciate.
I'm not sure Easy Bill Pay even knew of the problem until we reported it, until we got a citizen complaint, reported it to them, and so on.
Other item, again, that Mr. Williams, that also was on my list. Mine, again, recognizing that public comments with the state parks last week. There were some 25 Lincoln City citizens here. It was a great turnout here. I thought good sharing of information about Division 16 is the rules around, proposed rules around the use of state parks. And again, very pleased that we have that kind of participation. Reminding council that there's a work session March 6th at 10 a.m. on VCB, and then we agreed tonight for a March 12th, 4:30 on urban renewal work session, and we've canceled temporarily the scheduled March 14th work session on housing. So if you'd be so mark your calendars appropriately, I'd appreciate it. The VCB is at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, March 6th. With that, stand adjourned.